Hello and welcome to the Nerdosphere. I'm one of your hosts, Clayton, joined as always by my brother, the biggest palate of the Mississippi, Corona Bane, Corbin.
Skull! How are you?
I'm also joined by our very good friend, Miss Me With All That Anime, #NeverTim. Tim.
What's going on, my brothers? Hey, so I wanted to say I like Corbin's cup a lot. I got one up ya. Oh, look at that
merch.
Look at that nerd merch right there.
Which one's more important?
I just have a can.
Sporting the family heritage or sporting the family
heritage?
Before we get started, we have a message. Corbin, I believe you wanted to be the one to talk about it. So go ahead.
Okay, so this will just be short and sweet. But over the past couple of weeks, we haven't really said a whole lot on our socials except for participating in Blackout Tuesday. And partly that's because we don't need our voices necessarily in the mix. We simply just want to let everyone know that we are listening. We are praying for true equality. We are observing. And at the end of the day, we truly do want this place to be an escapism from the world, a place where we can nerd out about the stuff that we love. And the most controversial topics that we talk about is the fact that this release of Snyder Cut won, and that is not a victory for anyone in this world. But we definitely are observing what is surrounding the country during this time and around the world. And we are observing and listening. But we want to appreciate and thank everyone that is in our group that has really embraced creating the Nerdosphere as a safe place for people to come and get away from it all. When we launched it, we didn't want things to ever get too serious in the group, and we never actually had to explicitly say that. Everyone just kind of understood the vibe of the community. And that's something that I've really appreciated, a place to go laugh and smile. And that's all we really want to bring to the interwebs with our content. So thank you.
Just a safe place for us all to have a good laugh and a moment away from the crazy world we live in. That's all we want for our peeps.
We love you all, even if you love the Snyder Cut, even if you love The Last Jedi, and even if you love Signs. We still love you.
Nah.
I won that poll. You're in the minority, bro. So if you love The Shining,
I still love you, Corbin.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Is this where we kiss?
No. Oh god, he's leaning in.
Oh,
that's way too close.
Sorry.
Well, now that that's out of the way, tonight we have an epic podcast. We are going to go through every single Marvel MCU Cinematic Universe movie, bracket style, until we come out with a single best Marvel movie. For those that don't know, this is their Nerdosphere. We are a podcast that discusses anything you can nerd out about, from the big screen to the small screen and anything in between. Whether it's movies, shows, books, music, whatever. You can nerd out about it. We're going to talk about it. So how are we doing, boys? Let's get into a little... How we doing?
Chitty chatty?
Yeah, a little chit chat.
I'm doing all right.
I'm having my first coffee in Kahlua, and it's mind-blowingly good.
I told you.
It's a problem.
I've been saying. It's very good.
It's ridiculously good. See, but there's a difference between me and Clayton. Okay? The difference is I went into it with an open mind. He said, "Hey, you got to try coffee in Kahlua." I'm like, "Man, why mess with a good thing?"
Is this going to be a sandal thing?
Why mess with a good thing? And he goes, "Just trust me, bro." And guess what? My brother did not steer me wrong. It's delicious.
Yeah.
I came to him and said, "Let me change your life. Let me send you a pair of flippy floppies."
You
A
didn't
nice pair of flippy floppies. I'm not talking about the
You
dollar
never said you're going to
throwaways
send
from.
me a pair of
Oh,
flip flops.
I will pay. I will send you not even Nerdosphere money. I will send you a pair of flippy floppies.
I'm
You
not
wear
wearing
for-
flip flops.
If you're sending flippy floppies, just send me a new pair because I've had mine for 5 years.
I will
1
never
month.
wear flip flops.
And your mind will be blown, and you're like, no.
If the
Can I have them
I'm
after
above
the 1
that.
month?
I'm above you.
if the conditions are right and the content is there, I would entertain some other form of sandal, but I will never wear flip flops. Never.
I think we need to make it a Patreon goal. If we hit a certain threshold, Clayton will he'll vlog his journey with sandals.
If we can hit 20 Patreon patrons, we're at 6 right now. If we hit 20 patrons, Clayton will wear sandals for a month and vlog every day. And I can get them when the month is over. Yes? Yes?
Yeah.
What if I get converted and
Cheers.
I want to keep them?
Skull!
That's great.
Well,
That's the goal, man. That's the goal. We want to enlighten
Then the
your mind.
world wins, Clayton.
If we hit,
world wins.
okay, if we hit
The world
21,
wins.
if we hit 21 patrons, Corbin will shave his head and his beard.
I can't
Live.
get behind that.
Live.
I can't get behind that.
Thank you, Clayton.
This is the year. This is the year of the Viking. We're embracing our Viking heritage. For those who don't know, Corbin and I are very proud of our press and lineage. We traced our line back to Ireland and then over to Lincolnshire in England. Before that, we come from a very good line. Then we found out even more recently that if you trace our line back even further, we are descendants of not only Vikings, but Rollo, the Duke of Normandy himself, the Viking who came over and became French royalty, essentially, because he was that badass.
And he would be so disappointed in you guys.
That's why this is the year of the Viking. We're growing the beards out.
I have to man up. For my
growing the hair
ancestors.
out, as you can tell. I got this nice mane going.
I'm starting
Corbin's
to braid my hair.
braiding
as it grows
his long hair, and the body transformation's coming.
I'm not a pressing, but I'm joining you. Look at this stubble.
It's coming in nice,
Ooh,
buddy. It's coming.
Look at
in
that.
nice.
If you were our slave, we'd make you a free man just so you can grow it out.
Yeah.
Ooh. I can tell that. I mean, our heritages are on point right now because you guys are as white as ghosts, and you can tell I am 100% Indian. Okay, I'm not 100% Indian, but I've got some Indian in me. I'm looking pretty dark right now.
1 and 1/24.
Are you high enough to get a tax break? Isn't it like 5%?
I was almost high enough to get free college. It was like
Damn, son.
17%, I think it was, and I was just under it. So
I feel like at that point you need to like approach the government and be like, really? You're gonna take this away from me too? I'm this close.
You're not necessarily wrong because it's reaching a point where it's like, come on, there's not
getting close. What's the difference between 14 and 17?
Right.
It's not a lot.
In a couple generations, like.
Well, especially like and maybe this is what you were saying, Clayton, but we're like the population of the pure population is just dwindling.
Right. Yeah. The pure population is dwindling.
It's like at this point,
I'm even more valuable. My blood's even more valuable today.
Yeah. That's right.
You want to work in our village?
Excuse me?
Do you want to work?
We're building a village because we're Vikings.
We're building a village because we're Vikings, and we just raided your house for extra electronics, and we're taking.
Is this some sort of like Animal Crossing nerd thing that you guys are into with your village?
No.
You guys gonna have me like trying to catch like rare butterflies?
Speaking of which, I have officially reached the 5-star level on my island.
All right, I gotta walk away from this conversation.
So what? At this point, should I even get Animal Crossing? Because I'll never be able to catch up to you. Correct?
Yeah, you can catch up.
I mean, I don't know if I'll ever be able to devote the amount of time that you have to the game.
I don't. As I've said before on this podcast, I've spent most of my Animal Crossing.
Will you be playing anymore?
I've spent most of my Animal Crossing time thinking, not actually playing. So
that's still a lot of mental ground to close.
It is. You're right. No, you should 100% still get it because this Animal Crossing, unlike any other, there's consistent events. They purposely didn't put everything in the game, like accessible in the game, so that time travelers couldn't ruin it all. So they've been updating it periodically to for the events to come out, so that people experience them all at the same time. Okay. There's just a lot to come. It's only been out for 3 months.
I really can't get over how good this meat is. I'm very excited for you to try it. It's so good.
But I'm super excited about my 5-star rating. Actually, it's kind of a little bit of a story because my sister-in-law, we bought her a Switch and Animal Crossing, and because she
Katie?
was because she was having a great time with ours, and I was like, you need to have your own island. It's hard enough taking care of one island with 2 people, let alone 3. So, and she was having such a good time that we're just like, you need to just get your own. So she did, and she hit 5 stars a couple days ago. I was like, what do you mean you hit 5 stars? I've had it way longer, and I play. Well, she may play just as much as me. I was like a little low key jealous. So I was like, I need to stop messing with these flower breeding and start working on designing my island. So I put out like 10 more items, no more than 10 more items. Abby played that night, and I was like, hey, if you got some stuff that would look good like in a yard, because each villager has their own yard, fenced-in yard, I was like, throw a couple things out there for me, because I kind of ran out of the things that would look good in a yard. So she threw out like 10 things at most again, and then the next day, 5 stars. So I had been sitting on the cusp of 5 stars for like 4 to 6 weeks and got lost in flower hybrids and just could have just had it the whole time.
I was gone for at least 2 minutes.
Yes, you were gone for 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Are you saying we need to recap? So when you
No, we're good. We're good.
Talking about how Clayton just reached 5 stars, and I was stuck with
just
the quandary.
Do I need to leave again?
Catch up to him. And after I said that I could, after he said that he could catch up to me because he spent most of the time in his mind and not actually playing.
All right.
We were like,
all right.
Yeah, we're good. No, so seriously, what happened there is I have this fully charged laptop this morning, and my kids have started playing Adventure Academy, this like online learning game, which is actually really cool for them. Well, the battery was at 0, and I thought that it was at 100. So that was my excuse to go and grab the battery and get plugged in.
I almost dropped my mead.
Well, you guys have anything else you want to say? If not, I'm going to do some housekeeping, and then we can jump into this bad boy.
No, I'm ready for Marvel, baby.
All right.
I'm ready.
It's going to be a deep dive. It actually might not be that deep because some of these I think are going to be pretty no-brainers, but we'll see.
Are you pouring a White Claw?
He's pouring a White Claw into the remnants of... Okay, for the audio listeners who are hearing this, Corbin had warmed up mead, like legit mead, in a horn mug, embracing our Viking lineage. He's apparently finished drinking it because he just popped open a White Claw and poured it into the very same cup. Didn't clean it out.
Rinse. It's gonna taste awful. That's actually pretty Viking. Now that I say it, you don't even care what was in it.
That is pretty Viking because so Vikings just like walk into the Great Hall and they grab a pitcher and just pour it into something. They don't even know what it is. They just start drinking it.
Yeah, it probably wasn't White Claw. What flavor White Claw we have tonight?
Tonight is the ruby grapefruit.
Oh, so the pink White Claw.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not only is he drinking
it's a transformation year, Tim. I
Claw.
had to start somewhere. Okay. At the end of the month, I'll be drinking goat's blood at the ceremony. Okay. But it's gotta be a transition.
It's only gonna take a month to reach goat's blood from White Claw.
At the end of the year.
You said end of the month.
You said end of the month.
That's the standard I set for myself.
Yeah. Online for everyone to hear.
Live.
Okay.
We're not gonna crop that out.
I can do this.
That's your 4th of July celebration there.
I can do this.
Yeah.
I believe in me.
Celebrate America's independence with a sacrificial goat.
That I drink.
All right, folks. If you didn't know, this is The Nerdosphere. We're the official podcast for The Nerdosphere. Check us out over at thenerdosphere.com, the hub for all of our content, where you can find all of our episodes, all of our articles, reviews, anything that has to do with The Nerdosphere. You can find it at thenerdosphere.com. If you really like what we do, check us out over at patreon.com/thenerdosphere. We've recently reset and revamped all of our Patreon tiers. We wanted to create a Patreon tier list that included more for people who maybe didn't listen to the podcast all the time. Before it was geared only to podcast listeners. Now each tier has items for non-podcast listeners. We're trying to build up the brand. We love the community that we've built over on Facebook, and we just want to give back a little bit more. One example is the trivia you guys have heard us talk about. We've actually added a trivia perk to our $10 tier. You get 3 trivias if you're a $10 subscriber, which is basically buy 2 get 1 free, because it's a $5 entry to our trivia that we do weekly, along with everything else on the $10 tier and the tiers below it. Be sure to check it out over there. I'm sure you'll hear an ad sometime in this podcast if you're an audio listener, going more in depth to that. But check us out over at patreon.com/thenerdosphere and check out the tiers. I am sure there's something there for you.
Which I'm super jazzed about, honestly. Like,
yeah, we've been
after we really workshopped them. Like, I'm excited because I'm proud of the content that we're giving the audience who pay into it. Like, even just at the $5, like, you get the exclusive show, the extra chit chat where you're hanging out with us, and then the personalized shirt with your name on the back with the jersey. Like,
yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. We probably should talk about that for a minute. It's the $5 tier that you get chit chat, or $10?
$5 you get chit chat.
So
$5 is totally geared towards like those who just really love hanging out with us on a weekly basis.
If you like what we do, like listening to us, like hanging out, we're launching a new show. It's called Nerd Tea. It's going to be just us. It's going to be a shorter podcast. I don't think we talked about a time, but I'm sure it'll be
30 minutes.
20-30 minutes, where it's just us talking about normal stuff. Like tonight, we're going to be recording the first episode. We're going to be talking about embarrassing stories. So we each come with at least one super embarrassing story from our past, talk about it, laugh about it, cry about it, whatever it entails. And that's going to be exclusive to patrons at the $5 or more level. So if you like us, you want to hear us talk more like we do in the beginning of the podcast, this is perfect for you. So want to get to know us better, this is the way.
And then we have some people who are in our $10 a month tier that seem to really like the exclusive premium stuff that's there. So we restructured that a little bit more to give them more. One feedback that we've got is that a lot of our fans really appreciate how much or how many books Tim reads and takes the suggestions super serious. So one of the things that we're doing in that tier is anyone who subscribes to that tier, we're doing a book club with Tim. He's going to suggest a book. You guys are going to listen to it on audio or read it yourselves, and then you're going to discuss it. At different benchmarks throughout the book. And what's also awesome is if you are an audiobook listener, which everyone on this podcast is, we have a special sponsorship through Audible, where you get your first book totally free if you use our discount code. And if you happen to have Amazon attached to it, you get 2 free books, which is going to be 2 book clubs in the bank for free that you can do with us and Tim.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I've led quite a few book groups at work. So I'm in my comfort zone there. I've read a lot of great things. So here in the next few days, after we give people a few more days to evaluate Patreon tiers, we'll probably put a poll out there for that tier and say, hey, if you guys want to do a book club, let us know. And we'll probably do a Zoom or something like that and meet over video or over the phone and go through any book you guys want. I'm wide open, baby.
We also have we have quite a few people in our community that like the idea of hanging out together. Obviously, because of life and Corona and stuff, we can't really spend time together in person. And sometimes we're separated by miles or even states. So one of the things we're doing in the $10 tier is every month we're going to be watching a movie together as the community. And I've already have a pretty good list. It's basically films that if you're a proper nerd, these are movies that you need to have seen, but maybe haven't. The first movie that I'm going to choose is called Primer, which is the most realistic time travel movie you'll ever see. And by the end, you're just like, whoa, it's crazy. So I'm really excited for a lot of the content that we've barely scratched the surface on just talking about here.
And custom t-shirts are cool. I mean, Clayton spent a lot of time creating the t-shirts, and you guys haven't looked at our merch shop. You can get some great nerd merch over there. And I'll tell you, we did not skimp on quality. This is not being biased. This is the most comfortable t-shirt I own. And I work for a company that gives out comfortable t-shirts. This blows it away. My wife wears her Nerdosphere shirt every few days. I mean, it's just super comfortable. We're already looking at the store and saying, okay, I'm gonna buy this one next week and this one and this one. So go over there. The prices are great and the shirts, they last and they're comfortable. I mean, it's hard to beat.
And if it matters to you, it mattered to me when we were trying to find the right setup. The shirts are made in America, which I think is also kind of cool, which adds maybe an extra $1.50 compared to a shirt that would be made in China or Thailand. But the extra $1.50 for us is important. And I think you really see it in the quality. It's super soft. The images are not iron-ons. They're literally printed onto the shirt, so they survive the wash. I'm super proud of our shirts.
They survive the wash, and they don't, like, I wore this today and it was hot. It doesn't like suck to your chest, right? Like some of those iron-ons are like super plasticky on the back.
Yeah.
Not these shirts at all. And you even got the cool little Nerdosphere logo
on the sleeve, baby.
Yeah, it's the little things.
On the sleeve. Yeah. So.
All right. Well.
Skull!
We have self-promoted enough, I think. One last thing, check us out over at facebook.com/thenerdosphere, over at Twitter @NerdosphereCast, and be sure to find us over on YouTube and subscribe. Be sure to watch YouTube. I don't want to reveal anything yet because we're still like kind of talking about it. I haven't launched anything yet, but we're going to be doing a little bit more with YouTube, so we'll let you know when that officially launches and stuff, but keep your eyes open over there.
Also, in light,
Corbin's waving in my face. What?
In light, also, I think anytime I yell "skull," we all need a drink. But in light of you saying that we've self-promoted,
I'm drinking without you saying that, but okay.
I do want people to know that while we don't have a firm schedule set up right now, you and I have been twitching, and we've been Twitch streaming a game called The Forest, which is a horror survival sim, and I scream a lot. And Clayton is helping us survive, and it is, for me, it's a blast. And there's been some gold content already.
You're lucky that I'm kind of addicted to the survival and building aspect, because sometimes you're a little annoying.
It's not his Viking heritage. Tell you what, I've seen clips of him screaming.
I'll have you know that I've played with you long enough to know that you've been having fun. So that really hurts.
I just said I'm having fun.
You also
I said you're lucky the game's fun.
Okay, fine. That should be on your radar if you guys want some time to kill and some time to laugh. I still personally would like to go through it and edit some of it together for YouTube or for those who miss the streams. Because there probably will. There's some good moments. Yeah.
Yep. There's definitely some good moments where Corbin's just being Corbin.
It's not my fault. I fell out of the tree when I was trying to Molotov, okay? It's not my fault.
All right, well, let's jump into the main topic. We are going to go through bracket style and decide which Marvel movie is best. So out of all the MCU movies out so far, so that's everything up to Endgame inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we're not talking Deadpool, we're not talking X-Men, we're not talking Daredevil starring Ben Affleck, okay?
Not talking asshole, but technically it's up to Far From Home, which came out after Endgame.
Whatever. You know what I mean.
Oh.
I said not sound like an asshole.
Push your glasses up and sniff a little bit while you...
Skull!
Oh, damn it.
Okay, fine. I'll be the only one who does it. That's fine. I'll have you know that I'm on my second of 3 White Claws that I've prepped. So I plan on this being a podcast.
All right.
Well. Yeah, and I'm also worried for you, just so you know.
Yeah.
Because not 3 weeks ago, we did the coronavirus hits the podcast, and you said that you can't drink because your liver might explode.
Oh, yeah. Is your liver suddenly okay?
I haven't done the blood test yet, but this was a podcast that I could not drink for because it's going to be so much fun.
All right, well.
You gotta live.
Go to the doctor.
That's
tomorrow.
The Viking in him.
Yeah, that's the Viking.
I go to the doctor tomorrow. I saw Rolo and Ragnar survive a lot of crap, so I think that I'll be
in a fictional television show.
I'll survive some internal bleeding. It's okay.
Oh, speaking of that stuff, I finished The Last Kingdom. Tim doesn't know this, I don't think. Well, maybe he does.
I'm the one who recommended The Last Kingdom for you, if you remember.
Man, it's really good. If you people out there are interested in Vikings at all, and this focuses more on the English side. But it involves that same time period where the Vikings are invading England. But man, it's a great show. That's really good. So
I finished Hill House.
Oh, nice.
And it redeemed my faith in new horror. I've been like super skittish on new horror. I don't know what it's been the past few years. I haven't found anything intriguing. Hill House has revived my love, kind of like Clone Wars revived Clayton's love of Star Wars. It's really good. It's not scary. Okay, it's not like going to terrify you. It's definitely has a couple moments where you're like, oh dang, but it's just so well done, and the story's there, and the atmosphere's there, and the directing it's on point.
Yeah.
So Hill House, definitely watch that. I'm way behind the times on that, but
yeah, that one's really good.
Yeah, the second one, Bly Manor, comes out this year, so make sure you watch Hill House. It's worth every minute.
Yeah, if it has even just the same quality as the first season, it's going to be really good. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into this bracket. Just brief rundown. We've got 4 regions, so think of a traditional bracket. We've got 4 regions. Phase 1's a region, Phase 2 is a region, and then Phase 3 we split into 2 regions. Okay, we're going to go through each region. Before we start each bracket, Tim will go over the seed. We base seeds on box office take. So the most, so out of Phase 1, the movie that brought in the most money in the box office, that's seed 1. Okay, and that's how we set up each bracket. We'll discuss which movie is best going up against the other. Go down the bracket till we have a champion, and then we'll go into the semifinals and then the finals. So
I think it's a really cool way to do it. I haven't seen anybody else do an MCU bracket where the seating was based on both the phase and the box office total. So we've got some really interesting matchups here that I would not have thought of had I seeded it any other way.
Yeah.
And because of Corona, I did an MCU marathon. I've done a lap around the MCU, and I am fresh and ready to go.
Congratulations. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
All right, I am going to pull up the first bracket, Tim.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and kick us off.
I'm flipping it over so that the folks can see it. And go ahead for our audio listeners. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so the first and second seeds get a first round bye with the way the brackets worked out. The first seed is the Avengers. It took home just over 1.5 billion. So huge success for Marvel. The second seed kind of surprised me, but then when I thought about it, it didn't. It's Iron Man 2. It brought in 620 million. So those 2 get a first round bye. Okay, so let's talk about our first and second matchup. The first matchup puts our 4th seed versus our 5th seed. The 4th seed is Thor, and it brought in 450 million. The 5th seed is Captain America, the First Avenger, and that brought in 370 million. The second pairing that's going to battle that we'll talk about in a minute, Iron Man is the 3 seed. It brought in 585 million, and it faces off against the 6th seed, which was Ed Norton's The Incredible Hulk, and that brought in the least amount at 265 million. So that's the overall bracket for our listeners. You're just listening to the podcast. Try to hop over to YouTube when you get some time, because Clayton did a really good job making this bracket look nice. So hop over there. It'll add an element while you listen to this. But boys,
and for those watching, not to interrupt you, the production value of this episode spared no expense.
All right, we've self-promoted enough.
You're going to see here in a minute how high quality this bracket is going to be.
You sound like the guy from Jurassic Park. What was the guy's name? Spared no expense.
John Hammond.
Spared no expense.
Spared no expense.
That's kind
of
let's dive.
Skull!
Skull. All right. All right, boys.
Nothing like an Arnold Palmer.
4th and 5th seed. Let's start there. 4th seed, you got Thor. 5th seed, you have the first Captain America movie.
Yep.
For me, it's Thor, 100%, all the way. For me, Thor did the impossible. Building up Phase 1 as we started with Iron Man, which is the MCU's most grounded hero, and seeing where the MCU potentially needed to go with introducing the most fantastical elements in all of comics, Thor had to be a home run to totally sell not just aliens, but also magic. And taking a Shakespearean angle at that tale and giving it that little extra depth of flavor, I think it was a home run. For me, the score for Thor is phenomenal. It's a theme that I still love to this day. It introduced us, obviously, to fan favorites like Odin and Loki. But Thor, at the time, had so much writing against it. It had a mountain to climb to be successful. And that was a movie where Kevin Feige said, if you have the audience laughing, they'll pretty much buy into anything, and it's much easier to stretch your suspension of disbelief. So again, for me, Thor was the biggest achievement of phase one, apart from the Avengers, because it needed to bring in that extra element that we hadn't seen yet in the MCU, to where we were able to then see Doctor Strange other elements later down the line be introduced. So Thor, 100%.
Well said. I'll let Clayton go next, but I just wanted to interject. You could also argue that it's the most important movie moving forward, right? Because when you think about everything that's in this quadrant right now, the other characters are gone. They're not relevant to the next phase of MCU. It's Captain America, it's Iron Man. So it was crucial for Thor to be good, because he is now the pillar of the MCU as we continue into the future.
Yeah.
Not to mention, the Avengers as a film is more so a direct sequel to Thor than any other movie in the MCU or any other movie in phase one. If you didn't see Thor, that was the biggest missing piece for you to understand what was happening, because Loki was the bad guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you missed out a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think it's pretty easily to say Thor. Captain America at the time, was good, but I don't think it ages well. And that's unfortunate, because I love Captain America. We'll get to it, and I'll probably bring this up, and spoiler alert, Winter Soldier is probably still my favorite MCU movie. But the first Avenger it had the Raiders of the Lost Ark screenwriter, right?
As the director, yeah.
As the director. So I had really high hopes. And of course, at the time you're all hyped up on it. But so for me, this is more about Captain America not aging well.
Yeah. Plus, there's
than Thor being
drama.
better. But I guess that's the same thing.
There's other drama attached to that movie. And that's one thing that, I'll be kind of excited to talk about some of this stuff as we move forward. Maybe the audience isn't privy to, but this is right around the time where Hugo Weaving got a really huge stick up his butt.
Yeah.
And it was the last blockbuster he had made. And coming off of that movie, he had talked down about his role on Transformers and stuff, which Michael Bay, despite the fact that I think he's a garbo director and he ruined my childhood franchise, my childhood favorite property, he did call him out and was like, you got paid hundreds of millions of dollars to be in a booth for 2 hours. Who are you to complain because you are a self-proclaimed thespian that deserves better when you chose all of these roles and you agreed to them? And Hugo Weaving went on record saying that while he's contracted to be the Red Skull for future films, he praised the God that Marvel Studios does not hold him accountable to that contract.
Yeah.
So there was just bad vibes attached coming off of that movie where I was like, well,
and
fuck
notice
dude.
He's not. Has he been in anything since then? I don't think I've seen him.
I think the Wolfman was after that, and Mortal Engines. That
was
really
he in that?
Weird,
oh well, because he's friends with Peter Jackson.
Movie, yeah, Peter Jackson produced that movie, and it's not that good. I couldn't finish it actually. I finished halfway and I fell asleep and didn't go back to it.
What were you saying?
And it was him who came back for Infinity War, right? Or did they subbed in a new actor? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's a guy from The Walking Dead. He's also an impressionist. He's is he Jesus in The Walking Dead?
Oh, he might be. I didn't know that.
It's the guy with the long hair and the beard and the beanie.
Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah, that's the character. That's the actor.
He nailed it because
he nailed it.
If you didn't know it, this whole time I thought it was him in Infinity War.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're all aligned here, boys. Okay. Thor is the winner for me. I'm going to go on record, though. I'm going to make maybe controversial statement. I know it's controversial with you too. Not only is Thor the winner, but Captain America: The First Avenger is the worst Marvel movie. It's the worst one.
No,
I know
because
you
you can
guys
still go
both
back.
adamantly disagree.
There's
It's
elements
terrible.
you can enjoy. The thing
It's
that
awful.
misses for me, the thing that misses the mark in Captain America is ultimately what the movie was. It didn't feel like, which was a war movie. It was a little bit too glossy for a World War II flick. And it kind of makes it a little bit more disconnected and makes it feel maybe a little more comic booky than the rest of the MCU, which granted, at that point in time, the MCU was still evolving. So I'm sure they're trying to figure out what tone they wanted. So it definitely, in that aspect, it shouldn't totally be a knock against the movie because it was still an evolutionary process. But like Clayton said, it doesn't age well. And partially why it doesn't age well is because they've kind of found the avenue they wanted to go down. And the DNA of the MCU now kind of rejects what the first Avenger was, but it is not the worst.
I mean, the biggest improvement between sequels is not even close. It's Captain America to Winter Soldier. Like night and day different. Winter Soldier hits its stride. It's got the right tone. It's got the right feel. That's part of the reason why I feel like First Avenger is so bad. When you compare it to the sequel, it's not even close. And it's a shame because Red Skull is such an intriguing character and Hugo Weaving is a great actor, right? So like you just start looking at the layers and it's like, man, this movie should have been so much more than what it was. So it's a letdown to me as well.
Yeah. All right. Well.
All right.
Back over to our bracket.
Schwang.
Boom. Captain America's removed. Thor's moving up. It's going to be versing the Avengers here in a minute.
Skull!
Production quality.
Okay. Next matchup, guys. This is a tougher matchup, in my opinion. Okay. We've got in the 3 seed, we've got Iron Man. And the 6 seed, we have Ed Norton's The Incredible Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Clayton, why don't you kick it off this time?
Iron Man, Incredible Hulk. Okay. So I'm torn, but I'm not torn on this one, and I'll explain. The Incredible Hulk is a really good movie. It's an underrated movie. I still wish Edward Norton had stayed the Hulk. Mark Ruffalo has turned out to be an amazing Hulk. He's amazing. But man, I would love to have seen where the character would have went and how he would have handled it, just because I think he could have been a better Bruce Banner. As the MCU evolved, if Edward Norton had stayed on and evolved with it, I think we would have got a better product, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, if you haven't seen Incredible Hulk for some reason, or you should go back and rewatch it. It's good. Timothy, who's Abomination? Timothy.
No, Tim Roth.
Tim Roth. I love Tim Roth, and I really hope that they bring him back because he's technically still alive. Anyways, Iron Man birthed the MCU. Iron Man was a gamble for Marvel. Corbin can go into the weeds on this, so I'm going to talk about it so that he doesn't.
My man.
But Marvel was going bankrupt. If this movie had failed, Marvel was gone. They put their money into this, and it was a huge success. They proved once and for all that it wasn't superheroes that made a bad movie. It was movie producers and Hollywood that made the bad movies. Because if you trusted in your source material, if you believed in your character, and you brought it to the screen, it's going to succeed. Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. have become legends, and it's because of Robert Downey Jr. is back because of Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
Jon Favreau continued to build his amazing reputation because of this movie. This is a foundation of what he's become. And if you're a longtime listener to us, you know that because of the caliber of director he is, Star Wars is probably going to be saved. So I have to say Iron Man. Have to.
I would agree with you that Ed Norton was the better Incredible Hulk. I think Corbin maybe disagrees based on his expressions, but I think something that would have been really interesting is you look at the story of the Hulk over all phases, and you get towards the end, and obviously you see Hulk shrivel into a shell, and that's a huge part of Infinity War. And I think that is so much more pertinent when you think about Ed Norton's Hulk, because Ed Norton's Hulk was just angry and vicious. And I never really felt that from Mark Ruffalo. It just never felt genuine like it did with Ed Norton. Ed Norton was very believable as a man that was just angry. I never got that from him. So this is a tough matchup. I agree with what you said. I think if we would have flipped the matchup around, if Incredible Hulk would have been in that top tier against either Thor or Captain America, I think I might have picked Incredible Hulk even over Thor.
I'm with you on that.
I think I would, but it's a tough matchup. That happens when you get to a bracket. Iron Man is the pillar of the MCU, and that movie's still relevant. There's some technology that's outdated. I think he's on like a flip cell phone in the very opening scenes, but man, it's still a fun movie. Jeff Bridges is still a great bad guy, and everything still works in that movie. It was also the first movie that I feel like started to really think about music. It's the first movie, but music was really important to it. And you see that just continue to build as you get through the MCU. And by music, I'm talking real music that you hear on the radio, not the score, right? Back in Black opens the movie, and you just slowly start to see that become a bigger theme in Marvel movies. So for me, it's Iron Man. It's not all that close, even though Incredible Hulk is kind of getting a bad draw.
So for me, Incredible Hulk is most definitely the black sheep of the entire MCU. And doing my marathon across the MCU, it is the ones I enjoyed the most. One of the things I really appreciate about the Incredible Hulk is one, in the same vein as if Iron Man didn't succeed, Marvel would be bankrupt. The Incredible Hulk was the same story. They took out a giant loan to make 2 movies, and the 2 movies they chose were Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. And the Incredible Hulk had an uphill battle because of how terribly received Ang Lee's Hulk film starring Eric Bana was in theaters. So there's a little bit of a redemption arc there for the character, but also a very trepidatious movie-going audience of like, I don't know if I want to see this. But one of the tonal threads that they latched onto was Bill Bixby's TV series, The Incredible Hulk. And it's very apparent from the music to the groundedness of the science of it all, that is kind of where they're pulling a lot of their inspiration, even down to the technology that they do in the montage recap how he became the Hulk, the instruments that he was using when he was experimenting with the gamma radiations is almost exactly the same technology visually that Bill Bixby was using in his TV series. Another fun fact for the people who like the Hulk character, the real reason why we haven't seen a Hulk sequel film is because if you notice in that era of the MCU, Marvel Studios was an independent studio. So they had to broker distribution deals where the majority of the MCU is distributed through Paramount. The Incredible Hulk is distributed through Universal because they owned ultimately the rights to the character, and they still do, which is why anytime the Hulk has appeared, it's been in a team up movie afterwards because Disney bought them, and Disney is not about to pay Universal a dime to make a solo Hulk movie. Spider-Man is the only exception to that rule because of the huge character that he is. I love Edward Norton as Bruce Banner and the Hulk. I totally disagree on wanting to see him in future movies. Seeing how the MCU evolved and seeing how Joss Whedon in the beginning era of the MCU, moving past phase 1, and how Joss Whedon was also a huge creative director in phase 2, Edward Norton's Bruce Banner and Hulk doesn't jive with the world that Joss Whedon sort of created and propelled forward. Joss Whedon gave us a Hulk that is more accurate to the Hulk in the comics. That's why he doesn't feel as raged out that like Tim felt in Edward Norton's Hulk. Edward Norton's Hulk, I think, is harder to evolve to a point where he's legitimately talking like he is in the comics and being Professor Hulk that he is in Endgame, which is also an evolution of the Hulk in the comics. I just feel like we needed to get the Hulk that we have now. We needed to have that kind of creative disconnect and soft reboot of the character for a third time to give us what we have now. And I think what we have now is better than what we would have had if Norton was on. Can't also forget that Norton left because he's a creative control freak. He was constantly rewriting the script to the Incredible Hulk. And the main reason why he walked away from the Avengers is not just also, I mean, he was asking for way more money than he was deserved because he was wanting just as much, if not more, than Robert Downey Jr. But he wanted script control rights. And anyone who knows Joss Whedon knows Joss Whedon is a one-stop shop. You hire him for your project, he's writing, he's directing, and he's editing. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He might even be rewriting the script and jokes on set that day. But he is not going to collaborate very easily with someone who feels like they need to have total control of their character in their moment, which is where Edward Norton was coming from. So I think from a creative standpoint, ultimately in the long run, he would not have been a very good collaborator for the MCU and could have been a hindrance to their evolution. So my vote is for Iron Man. Also, not just because it's a tentpole that totally launched the MCU, but a lot of people forget when Iron Man came out, he wasn't a household name. So I graduated high school in 2009, and the entire 4 years that I was in high school, me reading comics was still kind of a weird thing. Like if anyone asked what your hobbies were and I said I read comics, you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, those B-level characters in the Marvel Universe were not household names. And Iron Man changed all of that to where now it is common knowledge, and it's almost weird to think of that time period of no one really knowing who Tony Stark was. So it totally changed the fabric of pop culture, and Iron Man deserves 100% of all the credit and beats the Hulk.
Okay. So while I update the bracket for the people, they're going to get a quick view behind the scenes since we're doing Incredible Hulk is gone. Moving up Iron Man. All right. Updated bracket. Avengers versus Thor. Iron Man 2 versus Iron Man. And
we're going to stay in this region?
Yep. Well, we can move on. Do we want to
you
go
want to do the first round first? Why don't we do first rounds?
Yeah, let's go first round.
Do phase. Okay.
No, and on that note, you can't spend 10 minutes on every bracket, Corbin.
I'm not spending 10 minutes every bracket.
You spent 11 and 12 minutes talking about Incredible Hulk.
I have a well of knowledge that I need to tell.
We all know you have a well of knowledge. We love your well of knowledge. We have 23 movies to go through.
I feel like Snape. You insufferable know-it-all.
All right, so next first round, let's go for it.
So we're going to go down to phase 2 now. And the number 1 seed is Avengers: Age of Ultron. Made a little bit less, I think, than the first Avengers at $1.4 billion. And the 2 seed is Iron Man 3, which made $1.2 billion. Those obviously are going to get the first round buys, and we're going to have the 4 and 5 face off in our first matchup. The 4th seed is the movie we've already teased. It's Captain America: Winter Soldier, which made $700 million. Facing off against Thor: Dark World in the 5th seed. That movie made just under $650 million. Then the matchup below that is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy in the 3 seed at $775 million versus the 6th seed of Ant-Man at just over $500 million. So let's go back up to that first matchup, boys. We've got Captain America: Winter Soldier squaring off against Thor: Dark World. Corbin, we'll let you take the first one.
For me, I have to go with Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier for me is such a great Marvel movie, and it's such a great accomplishment for being the legitimate launching pad for where the Marvel's universe was going forward. The Russo brothers were brought on before Winter Soldier. The Russo brothers were directors and writer collaborators with Dan Harmon on The Community, which is a show well known for parodying tones of film cliches and TV cliches. So they really have a vast knowledge of film, of TV, of different types of tones. And so when they were brought on to the Winter Soldier, they really wanted to make kind of like a 1970s political thriller. And really kind of bring this groundedness to a fantastical character. And it beautifully worked. At that point in time, grounded had a negative connotation for hardcore comic fans because grounded was used in terms with like the Nolan Batman movies. The Nolan Batman movies are so grounded that to me, they're not Batman films. They're crime dramas starring Batman. But the Russo brothers found the perfect melody of grounding a fantastical element, but it's still feeling like a Marvel character. I do think that Thor: The Dark World gets a bad rep. It is infamously on the internet considered the worst Marvel movie. I disagree. Alan Taylor was brought on from Game of Thrones. He was a longtime director on that show to direct this movie. And with that, he brought a texture to the films. Their set pieces and their armors had more texture. They were more detailed than like the glossy, smooth metal. And in that movie, we saw the most of Asgardian culture. We got to see kind of Viking-inspired spaceships that they had during the funeral scene of Frigga. We got to see how beautiful that was, and have an entire society take a moment to mourn their losses. And moments like that, I think, are moments that don't happen enough in Marvel. The only other movie we really get to see culture in is the Black Panther movie. And so to have a moment where we get to slow down with the Asgardians and see how they live their daily lives, I think is an invaluable piece of the MCU. Brian Tyler did the score of that film and also did their revamped fanfare, which we had until Michael Giacchino came on that gave us the fanfare that we have now. So again, I think that unfairly gets a bad rep, but when you're putting it up against Winter Soldier, it's just not going to win because the Winter Soldier gave us the Russo brothers, which became the linchpins of the entire MCU moving forward and gives us the perception of Marvel Studios that we have now. And it is a great film.
Clayton?
Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
I already briefly talked about it, so we don't need to go into any more details. The Winter Soldier is still my favorite MCU movie. It perfectly encapsulates Cap as far as the cinematics. He looks real. Bucky is awesome. Like the way the Russos capture the super soldier is perfect. So it's just Captain America. Besides Spider-Man, Captain America may be my favorite superhero, and the Russos understand him, especially when comparing him to like I think their inspiration was more modern Cap stories, which obviously it's where the Winter Soldier came from. So
it was Ed Brubaker's run on the comics.
Yeah,
and they made the Falcon a not silly character.
Yeah, the Falcon is also a great character.
Something else that
Anthony Mackie is a perfect Falcon. He's not a good Kovacs on Altered Carbon, but he's a great Falcon.
Yeah, there's nothing else to say. I think Winter Soldier, I could argue that it has one of the best opening fight scenes between the main villain and the superhero. That street scene is A+. I mean, I can't think of an opening fight scene that really beats that one. The opening fight between that and the villain. And the opening
fight on
the actual opening
freighter?
scene in that movie is amazing.
Is also ridiculous. I'm talking about the first face off between the bad guy and the villain.
Okay.
Right? Like that fight is iconic. And like you said, him jumping out of the copter is just badass. Him just running through the ship, and I mean it's A+. I will go back to something Corbin said. They say the internet says Thor: The Dark World is the worst movie. I agree that it's not the worst movie, but in my tiering system, I'd probably put it in that bottom tier, maybe at the bottom of the next tier up, but it's definitely towards the bottom. So to me, this is maybe the most lopsided matchup in the entire bracket that we're going to see. Captain America in the 4 seed is ridiculously low considering how great that movie is. And Thor the Dark World it's just not a great movie.
Yeah.
It falls to the sequel tropes, right? Like you take jokes from the first one, you try to amp it up. And those are the things that I think are drawbacks for Thor. Whereas Cap 2 it just feels so fresh and it ages well.
Yeah.
Cap 2 is still a perfect movie.
It's still a really good movie. Yep.
All right, so let's move on to the next matchup.
Wait.
Oh, you got the fancy graphic.
So for those
don't
at
skip
home,
ahead, Tim. While he's doing that, go!
Thor: The Dark World has been defeated. Captain America is moving up in the bracket, and we will soon be discussing it versus Avengers: Age of Ultron. Next up, we've got Guardians of the Galaxy versus Ant-Man. Let's go.
I'll take this one first. Okay.
Sure, go for it.
Okay.
This is a tough matchup for me because I will admit that the first Guardians of the Galaxy is not a favorite. The first time I watched it, I fell asleep. It's the only Marvel movie that I can say that about. I fell asleep during it. I fell asleep during it, and then I didn't revisit it for like a year because I just was not intrigued. And Ant-Man, I went into with no expectation. I thought it was going to be a bad movie. I went into it thinking, this is not going to be great. I had a bunch of friends that were saying like, it's a really good movie. I waited until it was free on video on demand on DirecTV before I watched it. So this is only like right before Ant-Man Wasp came out. It blew me away. It's great. It's really good. It's funny. Paul Rudd's better than he deserves to be. I say that in a lot of Paul Rudd movies. He always surprises me with how good he is. That being said, after revisiting both movies recently, I think I've got to go with Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's very, very close. And the one thing that Guardians of the Galaxy does that pushes it over the top for me is it was the first Marvel movie that really made mainstream music an important part of the movie. And I'm a music guy. And I think that's some of the best parts of movies we see later on. Guardians 2, Thor Ragnarok. You just go down the list, and modern music really can make a movie for me. So I debated this one a lot. This was one of the tougher picks for me because I think Ant-Man is better than it deserved to be. But I will go with Guardians simply because the world they built is more intriguing to me long-term. The movie was done well. The music's really good. And I still love the characters more than any of the characters that I got to see in Ant-Man.
I agree. Unlike you, I really liked Guardians. I went into Guardians thinking, what are they thinking?
That was another property like Iron Man, more so than Iron Man. That was like,
why
the comics aren't good. Like
of all the comics in the Marvel umbrella, and at this time they hadn't, gotten back a lot of their stuff, but still, like of all the things, this is what you choose to do. And holy crap, did I love that movie. Ant-Man for me is just an okay movie. I love Paul Rudd. Ant-Man's, it's okay. It's good. It's just kind of your typical Marvel movie. If there was like a stereotypical Marvel movie, Ant-Man's it. It's just plain Jane. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. That's it. So for me, it's Guardians easy.
Something I'll say before Corbin takes off here. I think something I've learned is my expectation of a movie going in is critical to how I view the outcome. I went into Guardians with really high hopes. I was super pumped up on Marvel at this point, and it was not as good as the last few Marvel movies I saw. So it was disappointing to me, and I probably was not objectively fair. Ant-Man was the polar opposite. I went to it thinking it was probably a throwaway movie, and it ended up being way more intriguing and way better done than I had expected it to be. So I think that's super important as we go through this. Just where was your expectation at the time of seeing it?
That's fair. Your expectations going in definitely affects your opinion. Definitely.
Yeah. So bear in mind, moving forward when we do these brackets, I can't speak for Tim, but through a lot of conversations with Clayton and I, anytime he and I are to use the term like it's a typical Marvel movie, it might sound like a condescending tone. And in comparison to the highs of Marvel films, it could be seen as that. But in the grand landscape of cinema, an average Marvel movie for us is leagues above normal Hollywood. We get more enjoyment out of a mundane Marvel movie than we're gonna get out of like a pretty good normal movie, because they've just cracked the code for what works for them. For me, I agree with Tim in the sense that Ant-Man had no business being as good as it was. Ant-Man is riddled with a lot of interesting drama in that the script for it was done by Edgar Wright, who did Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It was originally meant for him to direct. The very famous scene with Ant-Man flipping up top on side of the gun and running up to the guy and punching him, that was a part of the VFX reel that Edgar Wright had done for Marvel, saying this character can be really cool and I want to do it. And it was around Iron Man that they hired him for the movie. Edgar Wright got caught up with his own projects, and by the time it came time to make Ant-Man, the MCU had evolved to the point where the script had to be rewritten to be reintegrated in the MCU, and Edgar Wright didn't want to do that. So he walked away due to creative differences, and Peyton Reed came on. I love Ant-Man because of the Edgar Wright flavor in the film. But as a movie done by Peyton Reed, I get nothing from him. And I get the same with Ant-Man and the Wasp. There's charming moments about it. I love Paul Rudd. I love Michael Douglas. But Peyton Reed, for me, brings no unique vision to his properties that he's doing for Marvel. And it just makes it feel like an average Marvel movie. Yeah. Unlike the Russo brothers who come in and do Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, you can see what the Russos are doing. And with that,
or Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi with Thor Ragnarok. You see Taika in the movie, you just see a Taika Marvel movie, and that gets you excited. Peyton Reed, he doesn't bring anything new to the
James
table.
Gunn.
But James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy, whoa. For me, blows it out of the park. I think he falls short in Volume 2, which we can talk about later. But for me, he took characters that I literally hated in comics. Again, at this point in time, I was an avid comic reader, and I was pulling my hair out. Why are they doing Guardians? James Gunn made me love his version of Guardians, and has James Gunn's flavor and name all over it. Yep. Guardians of the Galaxy beats Ant-Man.
All right. Well, let's flip back over to the bracket. Ladies and gentlemen, Guardians of the Galaxy comes out victorious. Ant-Man is defeated. And Guardians will meet Iron Man 3 in the next round. Ba-ba-ba. All right. So we'll go over to the next... yeah, is this one right? Yeah, go ahead.
Next quadrant.
Yep.
Okay, so next quadrant has the most successful Marvel movie of all time in it as the 1 seed. Avengers Endgame, in case you're living under a rock, broke every box office record that it possibly could break as a superhero movie. It came in just under $2.8 billion. So it gets the 1 seed. It gets the first round bye. Now, there's an odd number of movies in these brackets. So we don't get 2 movies in this bracket that gets a first round bye. That's the only one that's going to get a first round bye. So we're going to go to our first matchup, which is going to be the 8 and 9 seed squaring off. The 8 seed is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which made $850 million, against Thor Ragnarok, which made almost the exact same dollar amount. So that is going to be your 9 seed. Then we're going to have the 4 and 5 face off, which I think that's actually a pretty interesting matchup. We'll save that one for a second. The 4 seed is Captain America Civil War, which made just over $1 billion. And that's going to face off against the 5 seed, which was Spider-Man Far From Home, which was at almost the same take.
Just before we get any further.
Why is Far From Home in this bracket? Where is Homecoming?
So what we did with this bracket is we took all of the third phase and then we did box office take to do the seed. So I didn't do the first half versus the second half, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's completely based off box office numbers. So you'll see Homecoming in the next region. So real quick, Tim, just so we're on the same page, I built this bracket to look just like the makeshift bracket that you sent me, and I thought that those 3 movies were getting a bye.
So it's possible that I'm looking at an old version of the bracket, which would be awful.
Because I have.
Why don't you read the bracket then?
Well, I mean, you read it right. It's just you have the loser or the winner of Guardians versus Thor Ragnarok going up against Avengers Endgame, which means the winner of that would go up against the winner of Captain America. So wouldn't we wait to do Captain America and Spider-Man in the next round?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay. We've got a play-in game for this bracket. That's right.
Yep.
Okay, so let's
we're only doing Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok for round 1 in this region.
Okay, let's do that. So again, 8 seeds, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 versus Thor Ragnarok. Corbin, you want to kick us off this time?
I will. So for me, the answer is super easy, no brainer, without a second thought. It's Thor Ragnarok 100%. My reasoning for this is simple. Taika Waititi. He took a franchise that, based on fans, was dead in the water and breathed new life into it. He took a character like Thor, stripped everything we knew about him away, destroyed Mjolnir, and had to reinvent the character. We got to see him on a quest that was unlike any Thor movie or Marvel movie, where he is out in outer space, totally embracing the Jack Kirby era of Marvel Comics illustration. It was bonkers. It was crazy. We got a sweet team up with the Hulk. And we got to see an evolution of Thor that was endearing. His character truly evolves for the first time, in my opinion. We have great comedy that Taika and Chris Hemsworth are able to lean into each other collaboratively. And we get to explore a little bit more of what Thor's powers mean. Guardians Volume 2 for me falls super flat because it falls into the sequel sins, which is, yes, does it have James Gunn's flavor on it? Of course. Is the Volume 2 mix of music great? Yes, it is. We get to explore cool comic elements like Ego the Planet being a Celestial, which is going to be a bigger story element in the Immortals in this new phase of Marvel. But for me, it was just like every joke or vibe that seemed to work in Guardians 1 was just shot through adrenaline. Drax was overused to the point where it was cringy. I was like, stop. Like, Dave Bautista is not this funny. Drax isn't this funny. And jokes were going on for far too long. I liked certain character developments between Nebula and Gamora, but for me, it is the weakest of this entire phase. And when you're putting up next to Thor Ragnarok, which is, for me, just a win in every single category, it doesn't stand a chance.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to go too much into it because I'll probably be talking about Thor Ragnarok a lot in the next round. Thor Ragnarok is one of my favorite Marvel movies. It's really good. To me, you have a battle of the arguably top 5, top 3 superhero movie against a almost throwaway superhero movie. So this is an easy decision. The most memorable part of Guardians 2 for me was their use of the song Brandy. I love that song.
Yeah.
But then Thor destroys it with the immigration song, right? From Led Zeppelin. You got Thor jumping down. It's one of the most epic scenes in any movie. Thor Ragnarok gave us one of the best villains in any Marvel movie. A villain that I think I'd like to see fight Thanos. We could talk about that another time. But I'd wonder what would happen in Hela versus Thanos. I think that'd be a really interesting watch.
Yeah, I would almost say that if I have to knock anything about Ragnarok, it's that Taika Waititi felt such a need to reinvent everything that he shat upon certain things that should have had emotional resonance. The Warriors 3 are mowed down by Hela so fast you almost don't realize that we've had 2 movies with these characters that I actually enjoyed as companions for Thor. So there is no emotional like, oh no, Fandril's dead. It's just like, he's dead, moving on. And the same goes for Odin. Odin's death it happened so quick that I would have liked a little bit more of a moment to process the fact that Anthony Hopkins is gone, and he fucking rocked the role of Odin, like out of the park. So to have his death be a unifying moment where Loki is no longer this like ambiguous like hero villain, that he is now united with Thor. I just thought we should have felt that a little bit more. And those are probably my only knocks against that movie, is that it probably leaned into comedy too much to where we didn't feel the emotions that we needed to feel when they happened.
So unlike you guys, I didn't like Thor when I first saw it. I just thought it was okay. But Guardians, it just did not live up to the first one. It definitely fell to sequel tropes. They tried to do the same kind of jokes, amped up. Drax was not the same character. He was funny because he wasn't funny. Like, he took everything literally. Like, that was his shtick. And he wasn't that same character in this. And he continues to be that character now, which is unfortunate. But Thor Ragnarok, upon pleading of Corbin, I watched it again, gave it another chance. I really enjoyed it the second time. I don't know why I didn't enjoy it the first time. But this is also an easy pick for me, Thor Ragnarok. So, for the round one of this, Guardians of the Galaxy is destroyed. Thor Ragnarok is going up against the biggest movie in history in the next round with Avengers Endgame.
I honestly think that's fitting. That's my hot take. That if any movie is to go up against Endgame, it should be Thor Ragnarok. If not Infinity War.
Okay.
Well, you might get that based on seating. We're just going to have to see.
Yeah.
You might get those two. Okay, so we're going to do the bottom quadrant right now.
Yep.
You good on your side, Clayton?
Yep, we're there. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's no play-in on this one, so I didn't screw this up. We've got the number 2 seed. So remember, the seeding's a little bit different on this side. There's only one 1 seed and there's only one 2 seed. The other side of the bracket, we had 2 1s and 2 2s. But phase 3 is just ginormous compared to what phase 1 and phase 2 is. So we just had to do it differently. Okay, so the 2 seed is Avengers Infinity War, which crossed 2 billion. We have the 3 seed, and those two aren't going to face each other yet. The 3 seeds, Black Panther, that made 1.3 billion. Those have a first round bye. Our first matchup is going to be the 7 seed, which is Spider-Man Homecoming, with a take home of 880 million, facing the 10 seed, which is Doctor Strange, which made 675 million. That's a good matchup. The other matchup we're going to go through is the 6 seed Captain Marvel, which made 1.1 billion, against the 11 seed Ant-Man and the Wasp, which made 622 million. So boys, let's go ahead and kick it back up. Spider-Man Homecoming in our 7 seed versus Doctor Strange. This is a marquee matchup in my opinion because it's a tough one to pick.
This is the hardest one, I think, out of any of them.
It's tough. How about I start this one?
I don't know if it's the White Claw and mead, but I'm tearing up. Like this for me.
You're also turning red.
This is really hard.
I don't think that's the White Claw. I think that's your liver erupting.
You're very red. Okay, so I'll kick this one off and then I'll let you guys go around the room. This is tough, but it's also not tough for me. This is not the toughest matchup in my opinion. Doctor Strange was like Ant-Man to me. It was significantly better than I thought it would be. It's a good movie. It's a legit good movie. It brought elements of magic to the Marvel universe that I could not personally envision. It brought an Inception-like feel. We've talked about Nolan a few times. This movie feels like Inception at times to me. It's a great movie. All of that being said, I've got to go with the favorite, the 7 seed Spider-Man Homecoming, because I was not a huge Spider-Man fan. I'm unlike Corbin and Clayton. I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan. This movie made me a Spider-Man fan. It is as good as it gets. It's the best Spider-Man movie that we've gotten. It has the best Spider villain that we've gotten in Michael Keaton. It's a dang good movie. It's got comedy, it's got great action, and it propels Spider-Man to the important role that he is today. So for me, I got to go with my heart on this one. This is a tough matchup because Doctor Strange is a legitimately great movie, but I'm going to go Spider-Man Homecoming.
Clayton, can I kind of talk through some of my my thoughts and not choose, and then you kind of talk through it, and we can just kind of like bring this home. I kind of laugh saying it, but there are moments like when we were choosing like Nickelodeon shows and stuff where sometimes hearing the person swayed, and I don't know if I need swaying or you need swaying, but I kind of just need to say what I need to say about each movie and still kind of like let it steep for a moment.
Go for it.
So for starters, for anyone who is a long-term fan of the Neurosphere, you know that my very, very favorite composer of all time, who follows us on Twitter, which is a huge win, is Michael Giacchino. He is phenomenal. He scored both Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is my very favorite score. Going for Baroque is phenomenal. He brings the harpsichord into a film franchise that I've never seen that before, and it was awesome. But the sheer monumental success that is Spider-Man being in the MCU is only because of Kevin Feige being the EP of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Spider-Man is owned in totality by Sony, and Sony was 100% willing to just reboot the franchise again after the flop of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And if you were to go online, which I encourage you to do if you're like a cinephile, read the script notes that Feige sent Amy Pascal on The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and the notes he had to change that movie would have made that movie really, really good. So he already was invested in this character. This union between Disney and Sony was unlike anything Hollywood has ever seen. Disney said, we will fund the movie. Just give us creative freedom to hire the talent we want, and you reap the profits of the film because we already have the merchandise rights. And Sony said, okay. And because of this movie, Sony had the highest grossing film they ever had. We have an earlier podcast episode where we talked about the potential end of Sony Pictures. And it was because Sony Pictures was creating such a deficit for itself that was literally waiting to see how this movie did in conjunction with the Emoji Movie to decide whether or not to sell their entire film division and just stick with technology, because they were not striking home runs anywhere.
If they had not made that deal, we wouldn't have a Sony Pictures today.
Newsflash, one of those two movies did not do well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did awful.
So this movie is a huge win on a lot of different fields. I think Tom Holland brings us a Peter Parker Spider-Man that is perfect. I think that Andrew Garfield is the perfect Spider-Man, and I feel like Tobey Maguire was a really good Peter Parker, but they each were missing some sort of element. But Tom Holland marries it all together, which I think is awesome. But with Doctor Strange, you have Scott Derrickson coming in, who's only ever done horror films, so he has a unique vision for Doctor Strange to kind of make it kind of an LSD trip throughout the entire film. If it was not for him, we wouldn't have the visuals that we have. And in the same vein as Thor brought us mysticism, but they still try to cover it up with like what you consider magic, my people consider science. Doctor Strange goes head in and says, no, this is all magic. This is 100% happening. And Benedict Cumberbatch is perfect for the role. There was a point in time where we almost had Joaquin Phoenix as Doctor Strange, and he ended up not taking it because, one, he felt like he was so unused to working in films that worked with such heavy VFX that he thought he'd be a hindrance. And two, Benedict Cumberbatch was the number one pick for Marvel Studios, and they decided, we're going to wait till his schedule is open, and we'll make this when we can make it because we want to have the right actor. And Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange has such a heavy presence in the MCU as a character, but has been in the fewest films. He had a cameo glimpse in Thor Ragnarok. And by the time we get to see him as a supporting cast member in Infinity War, he has such a commanding presence in the MCU, and that is only because him as an actor and his solo outing was so impactful that you really feel it. And that can't be understated enough. That he was only had one movie before Infinity War and Endgame, and he was in minimal amounts of both, but he felt like one of the heaviest hitters in the entire MCU. So I don't know. This is hard. What are your thoughts, Clayton?
It is very hard. For anyone that knows me, or anyone that has listened to our podcast for a while, you know that Spider-Man is my all-time favorite Marvel character, my all-time favorite fictional character. Like, I am a Spider-Man man. I love Spider-Man. Tom Holland is probably the best Spider-Man to date. I did really like Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, though. I did really like him. He was good. It's just unfortunate that those movies... Amazing Spider-Man, I would still say is a good movie. I'm going to stand by that.
I agree. Mark Webb brought a really good, interesting tone to it.
And I may have been blinded by Spider-Man love, but every year I have a memory reminder on Facebook of my review of Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I loved it. I said it was amazing.
There were great elements in the movie.
There was great elements in that. So that's all to say that I love Spider-Man basically no matter what, unless it's Spider-Man 3 starring Tobey Maguire. That movie is trash. And Into the Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie of all time. So, that being said, Corbin, you brought up some extremely good points in that Benedict Cumberbatch brings a strong presence with his Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange going forward, I think, is going to be very important to the MCU overall. I really, really think that he is going to be the new Tony Stark, in the sense that the other superheroes will look to him, or at least he will be inserting himself in future team-up movies as this is what we need to do. Like, even if the other team members don't look to him, what do? He's going to be the one who steps up and says, this is what we're going to do.
Not to mention his role as Doctor Strange, because he's been touched by... He's the only character to be reinterpreted by so many directors and writers and feel consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, even though Doctor Strange 2 has a new director and stuff, I'm not overly concerned, because at this point, 3 different directors and 4 different writers have touched the character, and he feels the same.
Yep, and he's the same. This is very hard. Tim had some great points. Michael Keaton as the Vulture is an amazing villain. Maybe one of the best villains in the MCU besides Thanos.
He didn't die.
Yeah, and he didn't die, which is amazing. We're going to get to see him again. But for me, I think I'm going to have to say, which movie have I personally sat down and said, I'm going to watch this again more?
Doctor Strange.
And it's Doctor Strange. I have watched Doctor Strange. I can't count how many times I've watched Doctor Strange. Since Homecoming has come out, I didn't even own Homecoming for more than a year. I finally bought it because in talking to Cadus, my oldest son, I realized he hadn't seen it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to buy it and you can watch it. And we watched it. I don't know that I've watched it since, to be honest with you guys. It's an amazing movie. I love it. But I can sit and watch Doctor Strange over and over. So I have to pick Doctor Strange.
I agree. And that's the piece I was missing. I hadn't worked through my spiel talking to you. I hadn't worked that part out. Which movie do I watch the most? And while I think Spider-Man Homecoming is a perfect Spider-Man movie, and I agree with you, Spider-Man is one of the comic characters that I am trying in my head to figure out, how do I put a tattoo on my body about, because he means so much to me. But Doctor Strange, I rewatch it. I rewatch it all the time.
That's an easy one. You put Spider-Man's arm down your penis, and it's like the web slinger.
Oh, so when I when I come, it thwips.
Okay.
I can do that every time I have sex with someone. I'll just my orgasm face will just be thwip.
Would it be the Tobey Maguire angry dance-off scene in Spider-Man 3? Make that your face.
No. But like I said, I think that's the missing piece, and I think that of all the new movies coming out, I almost feel most protective over him. Like I feel safe with, even if John Watts doesn't come back to Spider-Man 3, as long as Marvel Studios is involved, I feel safe with that. But I am upset with Sam Raimi coming on because I feel protective of Doctor Strange. And so I agree. I think I have to choose Doctor Strange over Spider-Man Homecoming, which is a shock to me. But, you know, it was a shock to me that I would love Guardians.
And it's a weird thing, too. I want to get your take on this before we go on, both of you. Tomorrow, we have the third installment of Spider-Man, which we know nothing about, I understand. And we have the Multiverse of Madness, and they come out the same day. Which one are you seeing first?
Multiverse of Madness, because it is the Multiverse of Madness is the evolution of the MCU. We have all these Disney Plus shows that are coming out, but the Multiverse of Madness is the only one that is directly leading up to a movie where Wanda is going to be a supporting cast member in that film, and that film is directly linked to the reality calamity that she causes in that show. So it's reverse Star Trek in the sense that Star Trek was a show moving to a movie. We now have a show that is influencing the movieverse.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's a far faster hype train than Far From Home going into the third Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, your multiverse, Clayton.
Yeah, I think that's almost an unfair question, just because Multiverse of Madness is going to have a bigger impact on the MCU as a whole, and I think it'll be the more interesting story. And we don't know anything about Spider-Man 3, so
it's the last one though, right?
Well, haven't they commit?
Oh, there's two more.
There's two more solo movies, and I think an ensemble.
So we just based on what we know, because we don't know anything, I have to say Multiverse of Madness. So
fair.
All right, so Spider-Man versus Doctor Strange. Go bye. Spider-Man surprisingly is going away, and Doctor Strange, the first big upset, I think, of our situation. Doctor Strange is going to be going against Infinity War. I'm so sorry for that.
It can't be stated enough, though, out of the 22/23 movies that are the MCU right now, so many of them are gold. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We've obviously
constructed a
mechanism where you have to have a winner, but they're all so good. There's only like 3 movies that I struggled to get through when I did my marathon, and we'll get into some of those later.
All right, let's get into this last round 1 bracket.
Right. Last round. In the first round, Captain Marvel, the 6th seed, versus Ant-Man and the Wasp, the 11th seed.
Those are going up against each other?
Those are up against each other.
They both have the same failing. Like the things I don't like about both of them. So when Clayton talks about it feels like a cliche Marvel movie, as in like it's a good movie overall, but it's just lacking a little bit of spice. For me, that's Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel to a T. Captain Marvel is directed by, I don't even know their names, but it's some random guy and some random girl. They're not related. They're not friends. They were hired on as a duo to make this movie. And because of that, there's not a whole lot of like extra sauce being brought to the table. And if anyone who knows me, I love my sauces on my food. And this doesn't have it. It's kind of dry. It introduced the Skrull and Kree, which I love. That's a huge element in the Marvel comics. And I'm hoping that beyond this movie, the Skrulls still have a more menacing presence, because a secret invasion adaptation from the comics into the cinematic universe could still be done and utilized in a really unique and cool way. You could have characters like even Michael Douglas, or even characters like we had a better explanation. Tony Stark is too too far stretched for the imagination. But you can have other temple characters. Oh, my theory was like introduce new characters in the new phases. Like it's fantastic. Get them attached. Get the audience attached to those characters and have them be fake outs later on down the road. So like two ensemble films later, you have Secret Invasion, and new characters that we love aren't who you thought they were. That would be super cool and super unique. But Brie Larson up until this movie, I really enjoyed. Most of her movies are really good, but her performance is super flat. I'm not going to get into her personal politics when movies coming out because that annoys some people. I understand some of the things that she said, but her performance in the movie is flat. Jude Law, who is a character born to play a villain. If you've seen King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, he makes a phenomenal villain because he's made a career of being the good guy. His performance falls a little flat. There's no unique score. The Skrulls are made to be empathetic villains, which you could say is turning your anticipation on its head, but it didn't work for me. I was like, okay. They made a point to try to make a Tesseract subplot. It was just okay. They explained away Nick Fury's scar in a way that's so demystifying that I think it cheapens the scar when he like ambiguously is talking about it in The Winter Soldier. And he talks about that it happened when he trusted a friend. It's talking about the cat he was holding. Like that's super lame. It's not a movie that adds as much depth to the MCU as they were hoping it would add. Similar to like Rogue One is a movie that adds depth to the Star Wars universe but comes out way later. I'm okay with that kind of film if it works. When it doesn't work, man, it's a missed opportunity. Ant-Man and the Wasp, it fails because it's Peyton Reed. It's his first start to finish Ant-Man movie where he has creative control from the very beginning. And it doesn't feel much different because he's not bringing a unique voice to the table. And I love seeing the Wasp in action. There's a lot of cool action, but it falls super flat. But I will say on my marathon, the hardest movie to get through was Captain Marvel. So because I have to compare the two, Ant-Man and the Wasp wins this seed for me.
Clayton?
Well, Corbin talks so much that I don't feel like I have anything else to say, to be honest.
I'm passionate about the MCU. I'm sorry.
I know. You just got to learn when to let somebody else take the reins, my man.
That's not the Viking way, Clayton.
I'm also equally torn because they're both just kind of mediocre movies for me. I didn't hate either one, but I didn't love either one. Personally, I think that I enjoyed Ant-Man and the Wasp better just because Paul Rudd, I think, is just a better actor. Scott Lang, Paul Rudd, I'd rather watch him than what Brie Larson brought to the table, unfortunately. I'm actually super disappointed in her performance, not only in that, but in Avengers as well, because Captain Marvel is a really cool character, and I don't think Brie Larson is doing a good job bringing her to the screen.
To be fair to that one, her parts were recorded before the movie Captain Marvel was made, so she didn't even really know how. I mean, it's not an excuse because her character was flat in Captain Marvel, but creatively, she didn't really know what she wanted to do with the character because those scenes were filmed before her solo outing, which is why we saw the costume change so many times.
I get that kind of, but I don't think that that's an excuse either. Like, it's her fault, and it's unfortunately the Russo brothers' fault, and it's those two no-name directors that brought Captain Marvel to the screen's fault. She's just not a memorable character right now. So we'll see what happens with her. But for this bracket, Ant-Man versus the Wasp, I think it's just a better story, and I'd rather watch it. I've only seen Captain Marvel the one time in theaters. That's it.
So. I'll also say, as far as impact on the MCU, it directly is a sequel to Civil War and seeing the ramifications of his actions in Civil War. And that after credit scene, that movie came out after Infinity War. I know a guy that I worked with at Walgreens who hadn't seen the MCU at all until quarantine. And he was like, I'm going to take this time to watch all the Marvel movies. And he foolishly watched based on a Reddit thread that said watch in chronological order. So he watched Ant-Man and the Wasp before Infinity War. So that after credit scene didn't have the impact that it had on everyone else that saw it in theaters, which was this. Oh, I've never seen a theater gasp and be so defeated with despair as that after credit scene. Because we have a funny movie coming on the heels of Infinity War, and it ends with that reality smack of the snap still happened, folks, and Scott's stuck.
Yep. So Tim, what are your thoughts, my man?
Man, this was a hard one for me. And then I realized that it's going up against Black Panther, and both of these movies aren't great. So it's
so it really doesn't matter.
When you start looking up at it, you're like, this doesn't even freaking matter.
Yeah.
I wasn't as down on Captain Marvel as you guys, but Brie Larson was not good in that movie. She's so robotic and there's no emotion. And it's a shame because I think that's the more interesting universe that I'd like to explore more than what Ant-Man can do.
Yeah.
I think I would say Ant-Man and the Wasp is the one that I would be more likely to watch again at this juncture. It still has moments that are funny. It still misses on some stuff, but I think Paul Rudd's just better than Brie Larson, and it's not close.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the decision maker.
Okay. So we are in agreement. Captain Marvel is getting the X, and Ant-Man and the Wasp is moving up.
Another upset.
All right. So brief reality check for my podcast bros as I switch back over to our screen. We are at 1 hour and 40 minutes. We've gotten through round 1. We can keep going and make this an extra long podcast, or we can keep to our new internal goal of around 1 hour and a half minutes. I said what I said. And and make this a 2-parter and come back next week with another bit. So we need to decide that right now, live in front of the audience.
Corbin's choice. It depends on how much Corbin pours into round 2. If we got most of the background, I think we can get through the rest here relatively quickly. If you want to pour in a ton more background into the movies, then maybe split it.
I would say we're reaching a point in the brackets, right, where except for the
round 2, each round is going to have a movie that we haven't talked about.
Right. Well, so I was going to say the freebies aside, the rest is movies going up against movies that are talked about, in which case it doesn't require a whole lot of like conversation, just based on besides like us debating amongst each other.
Yeah.
And there's a marketing tool to call it a supersized issue, which is what Marvel always called their extra big events that they would have annually.
So you want to keep going? Make this an extra long episode?
I would say let's go ahead and keep going.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Unless you think we get more views by splitting it up. But I think that we can keep going because the amount of time and history on each movie is just going to decrease exponentially from here on out.
Well, what we could always do is, let's keep going. We can always decide if we split it up later for the audio feeds.
Yeah, I was going to say
the audio feeds, we can always just cut it in half.
The live cast, we might as well get out of the way. If we split it for those listening on the audio, they will never even hear this.
It's true.
That being said, I do really need to use the restroom.
And I need a beer.
So
Dude,
let's take just a quick break. If you're watching,
both of these with pee during our podcast.
You have not.
Take a drink, you pussy.
Take a drink.
I can't.
I dare you.
A Viking would.
So
a fucking Viking would.
If you're watching right now live, we appreciate you. I'm going to mute our mics. I'm going to put us on a holding screen. We're going to go use the restroom, get some fresh drinks. We're going to hit this round 2, and we'll be right back. Okay, folks? Hello and welcome. If you are just joining us, this is the Nerdosphere, where a podcast that discusses anything you can nerd out about, from the big screen to the small screen and anything in between. If it's a show, a movie, a book, or music, and you can nerd out about it, you can bet we're going to talk about it. Tonight we are discussing which MCU movie is best. We're deciding that with bracket style tournament. Seeds are based on box office take. Regions are based off phase. And we have just gotten through round 1, going into round 2. So without any further ado, let's head back over to my spared no expense, fancy prancy bracket. Boop, 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 boop.
Dab nabbit, this is a great podcast. I fucking love talking about Marvel.
All right, Tim, have you been keeping track? Can you rehash us, or do you need me to?
I think I've got it. This is all memory, though. So we are back in phase 1's quadrant right now. We are in the second level, and I'm going to just let you know what the matchups are, and then we'll go through them. I'm probably going to mix up the order we go through them this time, so stick with me. So the 1 seed is the Avengers. It is going to face off against Thor. And then the next matchup is going to be the 2 seed, which is Iron Man 2, facing off against the 3 seed, which is Iron Man. Boys, let's start with that. We're going to save the 1 seed for the last conversation as we go through this.
Okay.
Iron Man versus Iron Man 2. I know where you're at already.
It's no contest. So Iron Man 2 has really unique elements into it. One, it recasted Terrence Howard for Don Cheadle as Rhodey/War Machine, which is a great casting, by the way, because Terrence Howard wanted equal or / more pay than Robert Downey Jr., which is asininely crazy. Terrence Howard was like, "I'm the reason why RDJ got casted. Get out of here, Terrence Howard. You're not worth that much money."
A lot of that his agent, though?
Yes, but I've seen interviews where he has way too big britches for that time. Like, he literally credits himself for being the reason why RDJ got casted, which isn't the case. We have the suitcase armor, which is awesome. But this is like one of the rare occasions where Marvel Studios was the meddling studio, where Jon Favreau wanted to make an Iron Man sequel. The Marvel Studios kept saying it needed to be a setup for the Avengers, and implementing a lot of expositional material to set up for that. And it's the movie that made Jon Favreau walk away from Marvel as a director, because he couldn't make the movie he wanted to make. So again, there are elements to Iron Man 2 that I do like. I think it's, for the most part, a solid sequel. I do think that Mickey Rourke's villain falls a little flat. For those comic book nerds, he's a mashup between Whiplash and Crimson Dynamo. But I mean, Iron Man 1 is more enjoyable. It's the one I've watched the most. And partly because you can tell it isn't quite the movie Jon Favreau wanted to make. They were really trying to set up the Avengers a little bit too much in that movie.
So I know where this is going, and I'm going to talk next because I have a different opinion. I like Iron Man 2 more than Iron Man 1. I would watch Iron Man 2. If given the choice, I'd watch Iron Man 2 over Iron Man 1 every time. I like Mickey Rourke as that character. I love imitating his Russian accent.
Do it
in that movie.
Give me bird. Give me bird.
I want bird.
We can't deny Sam Rockwell had a terrible spray tan that entire movie.
He did, but he was a great hammer.
That's true.
He was funny. Don Cheadle was funny. I get the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm with you. But if you didn't know that, I think Iron Man 2 is the better movie.
We do get War Machine for the first time.
Yep.
And I already said that Don Cheadle was a better Rhodey.
Yeah, he is the better Rhodey. They address it on screen, which is balls.
So you're Iron Man 2.
I'm Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is much better. The Whiplash, that Whiplash in there may be a mashup of Crimson Dynamo and Whiplash, but it's still a cool character. Super cool.
So let me tell you, Iron Man 2.
That movie is the closest we get to Robert Downey Jr. or to Tony Stark.
Demon in a bottle.
Demon in a bottle.
You're right. And they wanted to do, but more to my argument as to why it falls flat for Marvel Studios being one of the rare occasions that over medals is Jon Favreau really wanted to do a Demon in the Bottle story arc. And for those who don't know, again, Tony Stark was not an average household name for a long time. He was a raging alcoholic. And I laugh, but it isn't funny. He is an asshole in the comics. Robert Downey Jr. makes Tony Stark an approachable and likable character because he's funny. But in the comics, it's usually pretty hard to get behind Tony where he's coming from. Because he's a dick, he's an he's a dick, he's selfish, and when he is on the wagon, or when he's fallen off the wagon, I guess is the phrase, he is a raging prick. And Demon in the Bottle is a famous story arc for the character where he is dealing with his alcoholism. And that was the initial intent for Iron Man 2. Yeah. But the fact that they didn't truly explore it also makes me go, maybe it should get my vote.
But also, if you really, really think about it, we wouldn't have the MCU today if they hadn't have meddled.
You're right.
While
we needed the setup.
We needed it. And there wasn't that much interjected into it when you really think about it. There's only like that one little bit in the middle where Nick Fury is there, and that's it. Okay. I mean, I get it from behind the scenes. Like, I get that Jon Favreau wanted complete control, but this was the first step for Kevin Feige to say, this is my vision. This is what I'm setting up. We wouldn't have the MCU today if he hadn't had whipped out his dick back then. So not only do I think it's a better movie, but
that's a bad take.
Let me just say
it's a bad take.
It's not a bad take.
Let me just say
you wouldn't have the MCU without Iron Man, the first one, at all.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that we wouldn't.
We wouldn't have the future.
We wouldn't have MCU right now if the MCU the way it is right now wouldn't be the way it is if Kevin Feige hadn't have whipped out his big dick and said, Favreau, we need to interconnect these movies, and this needs to be in this movie to do that.
Agreed.
All right, so I'm going to say that I'm officially now on the fence. I don't want to take Tim's voice away. So I'm officially on the fence now. So Tim needs to really make a compelling argument, because I might change my vote. So Tim is really going to be the dictating factor on how this bracket goes down.
All right, I'm ready. So, you guys know my opinion on Iron Man 2. We've talked about it. I think it's towards the bottom tier. Okay.
Well, you've said some very idiotic things before. So I
have. But let me tell you.
I spitefully am now leaning a certain way. So you better bring this home, buddy.
Before you get any further, I'm super upset that Corbin got snacks, because now I wish I had snacks.
Yeah.
So 1, I wish I had snacks. And 2, I feel sorry for the audio listeners, because now they have to listen to him chew.
Yep.
So
at least it's popcorn.
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Here, I'll mute my mic until I have something worth to say.
Good. So also, for anybody who didn't listen, Iron Man 2 and Corbin have a very similar storyline. If you remember Drunk Tony, they always want to know where I pee. And he just goes, just did. He pees in the suit.
Yeah, pees in the suit. Corbin pees in his flipping
Corbin
mug
just peed in his
freaking
Viking mug while we were sitting there. He's muted. Thank God. Let's keep going.
Can we just take a quick second? I cannot believe this man. He pees. When we first started the podcast back up, he's recording in his car, for one. And he's peeing in his cup out in the car. Now we're in the house. He's in the house. We're recording. And he's
could just get up and walk away real quick.
He could get up and walk away real quick. He could even say, we're live. And he could say, I'll be right back, guys. Keep the conversation going. It's no big deal. We keep it going. Boy in his
I do it
Viking
for the
mode.
show.
While staring at us
He
in the
does
eyes.
it for this show.
I do it for the
While
show.
He does.
While staring at us. We talked about this guy at the urinal, the guy who tries to make eye contact while pissing.
Yeah, he's
he
looking
just did
at
it.
Yeah, you
He
are
just-
that guy.
Not only was he staring, but he was recording.
Anyways.
Okay. I will say, Iron Man 2 has the best suit scene of all of the Iron Man movies, or any movie that Iron Man's featured in. I think the suitcase suit is awesome. I think that entire scene in Monaco where he gets the suitcase, he transforms, he kicks the car out of the way, and then he goes after Whiplash. I think that is as good as it gets for Tony Stark. I think it's great. Okay. I think Hammer was really good. I still legitimately laughed with the ex-wife. He's got the little missile and he's
Yeah.
Tony, I'm going to hit her with the ex-wife, and it just shoots off and hits Whiplash in the chest, and he just looks at it, does nothing. It's still freaking hilarious to me. That being said, we have lost our
But
damn
this ain't
minds.
Canada.
We've lost our damn minds if we think Iron Man 2 should be advancing against Iron Man. Again, let's go back to the conversation we just hashed out. Iron Man is the pillar of the MCU. It's still incredibly intriguing.
That only
I
takes
think-
it so far, though. How are we gonna take Iron Man all the way to the end just because it was the first movie?
No, but when I'm facing it up against Iron Man 2, which has bad CGI at times, the whole scene where he's fighting the clones in like the artificial grass area, it's cringeworthy. It's so hard to watch it now.
I don't agree.
I think the accent gets totally in the way of me fully investing in Tony Rourke's character, or Mickey Rourke's character. It just doesn't do it for me. Iron Man 1 has Jeff Bridges, which is a significantly more intriguing bad guy. He's a more believable bad guy, right? Because you have corporate fraud where you have somebody who's like, I'm just going to take this from you because this company's pretty much been mine anyway, right? So more believable storyline. The origin story of Tony, the pillar of the MCU, and the Tony that we ultimately get through the rest of the MCU. We don't get this Tony in the rest of the MCU. No, we get the original Tony, the one
That's
that
because he's going through character development, Tim.
Yeah, I understand that, but we're talking about what's the better movie. Iron Man 1 blows it away. And it's more relative to the rest of the universe. I understand that was important for Fahid to be able to interject. It's more relevant. You could throw Iron Man 2 away, and the rest of the universe is the exact same, except for a character change. That's it.
Actually,
it.
I have a counter to it being so important to the Avengers. I would dare say that Joss Whedon coming onto the Avengers actually derailed most of the Avenger elements in Iron Man 2, in that Iron Man 2 was setting up Tony to be a consultant, not a member. Iron Man was approved for the Avengers Initiative. Tony Stark was disapproved. The after credit stinger for Incredible Hulk was Tony Stark approaching Thunderbolt Ross saying, putting a team together. That, even though Incredible Hulk came out first before Iron Man 2, the after credit stinger happens after Iron Man 2, where he is now a consultant for S.H.I.E.L.D. like, hey, we're putting a team back together. Those scenes are incoherent when considering the Avengers because Thunderbolt Ross has zero say. It was never a conversation about, we want the Hulk on the Avengers. It was a conversation of, Thunderbolt, we're putting a weird team together. We also want your help and input on this. But he was never seen again until Civil War. And
I think back
he was
then,
immediately brought into the Avengers when the Avengers kicked off.
Yeah, I think back then the after credit stingers were more about, hey audience, we're doing this thing, get ready. Whereas as the MCU progressed and got more and more popular, the end stingers actually had a little bit more meaning. Does that make sense?
It does. I just think that when you put that all together, while Kevin Feige undeniably had a vision the entire time, that era of the MCU maybe was more in flux than the subsequent eras, in that, for lack of a better term, there are plot holes, and that the Avengers push in Iron Man 2 doesn't have the payoff it should have, because the Avengers film does not directly piggyback on any of those elements that were in place in Iron Man 2 for the sake of setting up the Avengers.
You lost me.
So Iron Man.
So
Iron Man
what
1
is the
my
point?
I vote. My point is, you almost had me, but Iron Man 1 wins.
Iron Man 1 wins. Bam. Do the thing.
All right, I'm moving over. We're gonna. All right. I actually already had it prepped and ready to go. I did. I knew that's how it was gonna go. Hang on, just for effect, because I spent so much money and time and effort on this production quality. Now we're gonna move Iron Man to the semifinal of Quadrant 1, and now we will discuss Avengers, the number 1 seed, versus Thor, which was the number 4 seed.
The number 4 seed.
Number 4 seed.
I'll kick it off. I think you guys are going to both disagree with me. I've recently rewatched The Avengers. It does not hold up well. It's cheesy. It's awkward. I will say Loki's great. Loki is really good. He's the redeeming part of that story for sure. The Avengers is the more important movie because you get the first Infinity Stone. You get the Tesseract, right?
Yep.
All of that being said, I don't think the movie works. And when I rewatch it, I don't enjoy it as much. Especially, and maybe I'm tainted because of how good later films are. And I understand how difficult it is to bring them all together, but it felt forced. It felt cheesy. I would rather watch Thor again than the first Avengers. So I've got an upset here. I think it's maybe a big upset. I don't know if you guys are going to agree or disagree with me. I would pick Thor over the Avengers here.
I actually completely agree, and I'm going to nullify whatever the flip Corbin's about to say, which he may agree with us, who knows. But Avengers does not hold up. Actually, looking back, I hate Joss Whedon. I hate him. I love Angel. I loved Avengers at the time, and I thought Joss Whedon is the best thing since sliced bread when he did Avengers. But now that we've seen real, like the Russo brothers, like real quality content creators have come and touched the MCU, we know how bad Joss is. And you love things that Joss Whedon does, knowing that they're kind of shitty. You know, like Angel's good and it's fun, but it's kind of shitty. I mean,
and the only great season is the last one with
right,
Spike.
the last season was really good. One thing, and this is the one reason why Thor wins over the Avengers. Cap's helmet in Avengers is my biggest pet peeve in movies and television. When he's wearing it, it is a hard material. It's a hard material. When he takes it off, it's a hood. Material. It's a soft cloth material.
Like the Flash show.
The only thing that maybe be a bigger pet peeve, and I notice this way more than people do, and it really frustrates me that I notice it and nobody else notices it, is when a female character's costume involves some sort of pump or heel, and then when they're running in a scene, that costume is flat. The shoe is flat. That frustrates the living hell out of me. But not quite as much as when somebody's wearing a obviously plastic looking helmet and then they take it off and it's suddenly a hood on the back. So for that reason alone, besides the fact that Joss Whedon, looking back without rose-tinted glasses, is not the director we thought he was.
Now, I will agree.
Thor wins.
that helmet is so bad that when Endgame was made, they CGI'd the entire helmet. It's hard to notice, but if you really look at the cheek line, the entire helmet is CGI'd, and it looks better than the original because the eye line is different and it's less domey on his head. Because
doesn't he say something about it too? Isn't there a line about it? There's not.
No.
Maybe it was Chris. No. Maybe it's an actual Chris Evans quote then, where he didn't like that helmet or something. Anyways.
Now there is a story behind the helmet. Anyone who bought a poster or any sort of promotional material at the time will actually notice that Cap's ears are exposed and the wings are embossed, I think is the right term, where they're coming out, like the classic comic character.
Well, they're not sticking out, but there's texture there.
They're not engraved at the very least.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the soft hood that you're seeing in those scenes is the original hood. They actually, when they ended up going to film, they could not get it to work and looked right in the action scenes. Now, this is a failure on the costume department, 100%. But the helmet look was a quick fix because production was on its way and they could not back the formula on his costume. But when push came to shove and they're actually filming the scenes, the soft helmet or the soft hood didn't look right.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. The helmet is awful.
Okay, so what's your answer?
My answer is, at the time, Joss Whedon is the answer. The MCU is an evolution. You cannot credit the MCU where it is without crediting Joss Whedon. If any other director had touched that movie, it probably wouldn't have been as good. Joss Whedon gave us the most important casting of most of any MCU film. He's the reason why we have Paul Bettany as the Vision. He's the reason we have Paul Bettany as the Vision. He's the reason why we have Jarvis evolving into the Vision, which is a complete...
We're not talking about Age of Ultron.
I'm just saying that you're crapping on Joss Whedon a little bit. He deserves a little bit more credit.
No,
yes, he's a campy motherfucker, and that's the reason why I'm very trepidatious about Sam Raimi coming on Doctor Strange 2. But you're right, it doesn't hold up. But
what is your vote? In fact, it doesn't even matter because me and Timba both said that Thor's moving on.
Oh.
Wow.
So unless you wrap it up now and tell us how you really feel.
My true feelings are what Kenneth Branagh brought to Thor.
I wish I could meet just you.
Is far more impressive than the cinematic,
his vote was Thor the entire time.
Historical vote.
After all this, his vote.
Yeah.
All right.
So before we took a break, we said, hey, we're going to go through the next few rounds a little faster.
Yeah.
And then Corbin proceeds to spend 5 minutes talking about Captain America's hood.
Listen, I said that for the most part, the movies require less. I said besides
Avengers in maybe one of the biggest upsets. Okay, Corbin, that's enough.
Huge. This is an astronomical upset.
That's enough.
This is
huge upset.
This was the first $1 billion
cheesy as shit.
Marvel movie.
Yeah, it does not
hold up. It's fallen.
I don't like watching it.
So Thor moves on. It will face Iron Man in the semifinals of the first quadrant. So before I switch it back over to our review, let's go ahead and go back down to the next quadrant. Tim, you good on?
Yep, I got it. Okay, so we are in quadrant 2, phase 2 right now. We have the number 1 seed, Avengers: Age of Ultron, going to square off against the 4 seed, which is Winter Soldier. But first, we're going to talk about what I think is maybe the more interesting of the 2 matchups. Guardians of the Galaxy versus Iron Man 3.
Yes, sir.
That's your 3 versus your 2. Clayton, why don't you go first this time?
Talking about Iron Man 3 versus Guardians.
Correct.
For me, this is super easy. I think this is going to be the one where we actually debate a little bit more. The last one was a teaser. Corbin pretended to debate us, even though he agreed with us. He felt like he needed to talk for 5 minutes to justify how Avengers was not as bad as we said, but then voted for Thor anyways. In this bracket, I know me and Corbin are aligned. Iron Man 3, shit all over the Mandarin. This came out in a time where the MCU is like ramping up. It's popping. Everybody, like, it never slowed down. So, take that for what it is. But the Mandarin, it's the Mandarin. It's the Mandarin. So not only is the public ready for Iron Man 3 because Robert Downey Jr. has turned it into a cultural icon, but the comic kids are ready for it because the Mandarin is Iron Man's Joker, okay? It's Iron Man's Green Goblin. It's Iron Man's Brainiac, okay? and then we get him used as a stupid plot device. So, first of all, the Mandarin is not the Mandarin that we got. So the fake Mandarin that we got in that movie is not the Mandarin from the comics. The Mandarin from the comics is a being that has collected 10 mystical rings. Those rings are magical, and it was a cool matchup of Iron Man has all this technology, and his greatest enemy is a man who holds 10 rings of power, 10 magic rings. So magic versus technology. What we get is a reimagining. He's a terrorist. We could get behind that. I remember being okay with it. Okay, I understand. Because up until this point, the MCU has been super, everything's based on technology. The explanation for everything is technology. So all the superheroes come from some form of technology. Even Thor being an alien, it's either it's alien tech. It's all alien or technology. Does that make sense? No magic. Yep. So, okay, I understand. You're crafting a world without magic, which, as we know, we finally have broken through magic. But back then we justified it as the mainstream audience may not be ready for magic. So they're explaining it in a grounded way. Okay, I can get behind a Mandalorian, a Mandarin who is a domestic terrorist. But then you find out
the organization is called the 10 Rings,
right? And the organization is the 10 Rings. Yeah, so it's a reimagining. I can get behind it. It's fine. In Fahey we trust, right? But then he's not real. He's an actor. It's all a fabrication. So this would be like going to The Dark Knight
Rises, where Bane is in the villain.
No. We go and we see The Dark Knight, arguably the best superhero movie of all time. Okay, I wouldn't say that. I think it's really good, but most people would say best superhero movie of all time, Dark Knight. You get halfway through the movie, 3/4 way through the movie, guess what? Heath Ledger's Joker is not actually Joker. He's an actor that's being paid to be Joker, and the real bad guy is Lucius Fox. Okay.
Whoa, what? What a twist! What a fucking twist!
Shane Black.
Whoa!
I hate Shane
Black.
Black.
Said, by the way, it's what we got with freaking Dark Knight Rises or Batman Rises, whatever the fucking last one's called.
Bane.
Yeah, with Bane Rises, not being the true bad guy. Yeah.
That also is what ruined that movie. So all that being said, if I'll be the first to admit that movie might not be as bad if Aldrich Killian if it was a 2-villain movie. Okay. Mandalorian, god damn it. The Mandarin is actually a villain, and he's teamed up with Aldrich Killian. Okay, that's fine. That is the one thing that really ruins the movie for me. So I have to go with Guardians. We talked about Guardians already. It's a good movie. It's fun. They took a unknown property that's actually wasn't really that good of a property to be not only unknown but not that great, and James Gunn turned it into something fantastic. And Shane Black ruined the arch nemesis of the most popular MCU character. So just for those reasons, I went on for way too long. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm going to go next because I know where Corbin's at. I think I know where Corbin's at. 90% sure.
You don't know where I'm at.
I think I do. Because you've told me openly that you think Iron Man 3 is the worst Marvel movie ever made. That
spoilers.
In fact, you said it has its own tier.
Yeah.
You've said that.
It's called the shit tier.
I guess go ahead, Corbin, because I've made your take go faster.
No, Tim, he doesn't need to talk because you made his point for him. So you go ahead with your opinion. Go ahead.
I pick Iron Man 3. And I can tell you why. I've thought about it a lot. It's because I never got into comics. So I didn't have an expectation that the villain was going to be Batman's Joker. And now that I've actually started to look into this, I totally empathize that if I was a lifelong comic fan, I would be outraged at what they did. I would be outraged. And so I think your guys' opinion is probably more valid than mine. We'll let Corbin give his, but Clayton, your opinion is more valid than mine because I knew nothing about Iron Man until I started watching the movies. Okay, so the twist didn't really throw me off that much. It didn't really like hurt me because I was waiting for this massive buildup of his arch nemesis and they shit all over it. It didn't bug me. I think Iron Man 3, if I can remove that bias right there, Iron Man 3 has great action. The scene where he's trying to save the president by jumping out of the airplane is incredible.
I will say all the different armor pieces in that movie are dope as fuck.
The armor, I mean, the scene where he's calling his armor from the tool shed, essentially, from the little boy, it's just fucking awesome. He's sitting there going through trying to break out. He's getting individual pieces of his armor at random time. It's fucking awesome. Guardians doesn't have that for me. It's got music. It's funny. It doesn't have any of those moments where I'm like, holy fuck, this is awesome. If I had grown up with Iron Man as being a beloved character, I think I would be incredibly upset. And that's why the opinion's justified that it's not a great movie. But since I didn't have that bias, I went into Iron Man, pumped on Iron Man. It's better than Iron Man 2 when you think about the individual elements. So Iron Man 3 would be my pick to move forward.
Okay, Corbin, without rehashing everything that we've already said.
And with your mic on.
Okay. My mic is on, for starters. And I don't need to rehash. Clayton said everything that, most everything I wanted to say. I will say, though, that even as someone who's not a comic book fan, the twist of the Mandarin is what we call in the biz a twist for the sake of a twist. It's disingenuous. It's not like a legitimate, like, oh my God moment. It's just more emphasized the fact that this like ugly man was stood up by Tony Stark on a New Year's Day party for a business pitch and held such a grudge that he wanted to kill him 15, 20 years later. Aldrin Killian as a villain is lame as shit. Now, you want to talk about villains? Let's talk about the one thing that I pocketed from earlier in the bracket, which is Guardians gives us a phenomenal villain in Ronan the Accuser. Not only do we get our first moment of Thanos being an imposing villain, but we have another subsequent villain that is under Thanos's hired thumb. Go get me that Infinity Stone and bring it to me. Ronan the Accuser not only goes and gets the Infinity Stone, but he does the one thing that is near impossible. He takes that Infinity Stone and fucking wields it for himself, which is something that happens in the MCU and is not given the respect that it deserves. It takes the entire team of the Guardians of the Galaxy to wield that one stone, and they're mostly in part able to do it because Peter is half celestial. That's the main reason why they're able to hold that stone. Ronan takes the stone and says, this is fucking mine. And I don't care what Thanos says, I'm going to be the ruler of the galaxy. And with that fact alone, Ronan is a boss-ass bitch and does not get the credit he deserves. Guardians wins, not just because Iron Man 3 is the worst movie in the entire MCU and deserves its own shit tier because of it, but because Ronan is the most unrespected villain in the whole cinematic universe. He's the only person to wield an Infinity Stone and not totally get destroyed. The only time we saw Thanos wield an Infinity Stone was with the glove, which is designed to hold them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even
That's
know.
not true. He takes
He does take a Power Stone off.
he takes the Power Stone off and uses it in his hand with no issues.
You
Clayton,
could
do you
argue
agree?
that
Iron Man 3 is the worst.
It's such an infinite moment that we don't really know what the long-term effect would have been. But Ronan was holding it the whole goddamn time.
If we're talking real and it's just us boys, I probably still would rate it towards the bottom, if not at the bottom. I don't know that there's another movie that I don't know that I would watch that over another movie. So if you gave me all these movies and said, would you watch this or would you watch Iron Man 3? I don't think I would ever pick Iron Man 3 against any of them. So in that sense, yes. But just to keep the shtick up, it is the worst MCU movie. It has its own tier and will always have its own tier in our tiered system. For those of you who don't know and haven't been listening for a while, Corbin and I have a tiered system. We had to expand it from 3 tiers to 5. And the bottom tier is always Iron Man 3 by itself because it is the worst.
And Nick and I have an ongoing joke. If you've watched our Harry Potter episode, you've met Nick. He's a fan of the show, and he's an occasional collaborator and friend of ours. And anytime Nick and I go to Walmart, I always go to the DVD section to always check. Is Iron Man 3 on Blu-ray still $40? It still is. Why the fuck is it $40? And it still is to this day. Doesn't make any sense.
All right. Flipping it over to the bracket, we are... Wow. Iron Man 3 has been knocked out of the competition. Guardians is going to the finals. I keep saying semifinals, but it's going to go into the finals of this region. And next we're going to be discussing Avengers Age of Ultron versus Captain America Winter Soldier. Tim, why don't you start us off?
This is a very easy pick for me. It's a very, very easy pick. It's Captain America Winter Soldier. I think it's one of the best MCU movies there is. We have a really important character in Bucky brought in. We've already talked about how great some of the action scenes are. I will say that Avengers Age of Ultron has aged better than the original Avengers movie.
Yes.
I would have said at the time that I liked Avengers better than Age of Ultron, I think. But as I've gone back and watched the whole universe, Age of Ultron is a better movie. There are elements I like. You get a super important character in Scarlet Witch coming in. All that being said, it still just did not perfectly click for me in that movie. It just doesn't click. I think this movie beats a lot of other movies in this bracket. I mean, just to be transparent, I think Age of Ultron's probably the second best movie in the bracket right on this side. But it's unfortunately going up against what I think might be the best movie in the bracket on this side, which is Winter Soldier. So I don't think it's all that close. Winter Soldier, I would watch that movie 5 times before I'd revisit Age of Ultron.
Corbin, you want to go next?
Yeah. So
we're going to put you on a 2-minute.
That's fine. So again, I think Joss Whedon deserves a lot of crap. But something he's very good at is casting characters that you wouldn't normally think. In the comics, Ultron is made by Hank Pym exclusively. For the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it didn't make sense. But it did make sense for him to come from Tony's hubris and Bruce Banner's intelligence that was yielding to the influence of Tony. The character of Vision is super important for the Avengers comics, but almost at the time seemed maybe too fantastical for the story or for the MCU at the time. But you can't have Ultron without Vision. They're kind of like a yin and yang. So the evolution of taking Jarvis and having him play Vision is totally a fabrication of Joss Whedon looking at the MCU and saying, how can I stay true to the tone of the comics and what characters represent, but having the MCU truly evolve on its own? And Age of Ultron is a total win in this area, in that Paul Bettany is the perfect Vision. It's really unique that Jarvis becomes essentially Vision in the movies. And Aaron Taylor Johnson is the perfect Quicksilver you could ever cast. And that is all because of Joss Whedon. It's also all because of Joss Whedon that Quicksilver dies, because Joss Whedon has to kill someone in his movies. And going into this movie, he kind of knew it was going to be his last one anyways. And he always does a death in his climax.
Yeah.
We also get a fan favorite event, which is Hulkbuster versus Hulk. That is like one of the most iconic comic things that you could ever have. And I think that we had the perfect team up between Hulkbuster and Hulk. There's a lot going on in that movie that I believe is a complete win. And I do enjoy rewatching it. But Winter Soldier, it just truly is timeless. And it's the first introduction of the Russo brothers being in the MCU and taking Cap all the way to his retirement. And so, while I think the Age of Ultron does not deserve the crap that a lot of the internet gives it, again, like Tim said, this is just kind of a crime of happenstance. I do think Age of Ultron is one of the better movies of the MCU, but when you're putting up against the Winter Soldier, there has to be a winner, and it's going to be the Winter Soldier.
Yep, we are all in agreement here, boys. I've said it before, said it in this podcast. Winter Soldier is, in my opinion, the best MCU movie. I do want to talk about Age of Ultron just for a quick second. Quicksilver in Age of Ultron may be my favorite MCU character. I loved, what's his name, Corbin? Remind me.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Aaron Taylor Johnson. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to, for some reason I thought I was wrong. Aaron Taylor Johnson is the perfect Quicksilver. He is leagues better than that other dude. Yeah, which didn't we just see an article that he was, did I dream this? Did he get cast in WandaVision?
Cast in WandaVision.
But not as Quicksilver, just him. He was just cast.
Yeah.
Man, I cannot believe he killed Quicksilver. Because didn't he have a deal for like 6 movies or something? Like he had a multi-movie deal.
And technically he still does. I'm still living in a conspiracy theory that we will see him in WandaVision in some capacity.
Well, don't we have...
I sent you that article the other day. It's been confirmed that he is going to be in WandaVision. So he'll be in WandaVision in some capacity.
Hopefully it's more than just a quick cameo.
Right.
But that Quicksilver, especially like in such a short amount of time, he goes from, the bad guy to just like the selfless good guy. Like justice for Pedro. Like, come on. Or Pietro rather. That's all I wanted to say about Age of Ultron. And what's his face? Man, I'm terrible at names. I apologize. Who plays Ultron?
James.
I can look it up real quick.
Oh crap!
Let's see.
The Lizard King.
James Spader.
James Spader. Yes, thank you. Goodness gracious. He's
got
it on
him.
That's
the perks of sitting next to the movie case.
Sorry to the audience. I'm terrible at names. But James Spader, I think, did a fantastic job as Ultron. Fantastic. He's a great actor.
He was great.
He's a
fantastic.
great actor.
Yeah.
I agree with Corbin. I almost think that movie came out just a little too soon. Like maybe they should have chosen a different story for the next Avengers movie, or even like put it off. Like I don't think people were ready for it yet. It kind of like how we were just talking about how people probably weren't ready for magic, and that's why they went the way they went with the Mandarin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's unfortunate, because I do think that it gets a lot of shit, and it doesn't deserve that shit. I think it's one of the better movies in the MCU. I agree with that. But it is not better than Winter Soldier.
Different league.
Different league.
Different league.
Yep. So let me get over to this bracket. Oh god, hang on. I need another red X. Hang on.
There's also a fun Angel Easter egg in Age of Ultron, where when Thor goes on his vision quest, He's in like the hall of Valhalla basically, and he's like confronted by Idris Elba's Heimdall, and in the background there is 3 humanoid characters, and it's a wolf, ram, and a hart, which is a callback to the final season of Angel.
Yeah,
which is Wolfram and Hart is the legal organization that's basically run by like hell on Earth.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the next bracket. Let me switch it over real quick. Go ahead, Tim.
All right, so this bracket, we are going to see the 1 seed and the most successful Marvel movie of all time, Avengers Endgame, is going to face up against Thor Ragnarok. But before we dive into that matchup, we're going to dive into one that is very difficult for me. It's the 4 seed, which is Captain America Civil War, versus the 5 seed, which is Spider-Man Far From Home. Clayton, Clayton, you did just a little piece there. We kind of stole all your thunder. So Clayton, you kick us off. Captain America Civil War versus Far From Home.
All right. Hope y'all are ready for this one. Captain America Civil War is a good movie. It's not a Captain America movie. It's an Avengers movie hiding as a Captain America movie, made even more prevalent, and we're made even more aware of this fact in the Infinity War movies. Russo brothers did all the Captain America movies after the first Avengers. They did both Endgame and Infinity War. Civil War is an Avengers movie. It is. Corbin doesn't agree with that. We actually got in a here's a little story for you. Driving home from the midnight showing from Civil War, Corbin was going on. He was all hyped. I'm going on and on about it. I love this movie, and I said, "Man, it was an Avengers movie. It wasn't a Captain America movie." And he got so defensive and butthurt. He goes, "Pull the car over. We're gonna fight about this." And I said, "You need to take a step back. It's just a movie." And it was an Avengers movie, not a Captain America movie. And he got even more mad. But so prepare for him to counter my point. But Civil War is a great movie. Spider-Man was awesome. We got to see Spider-Man in the MCU. Oh my God. The Russos deliver a fantastic movie. Don't get me wrong. It's a fantastic movie. It's not a Captain America movie. It's not. Even though a Captain America villain is driving the story, it's an Avengers movie. It is. It's as much about Iron Man as it is about Captain America. It is. So, now that that's been said, I think Far From Home is a better movie than Homecoming. I think Mysterio is a great villain. I really think that movie perfectly wraps up the 3-phase arc of the Infinity Saga. I really like the dynamic that we see between Tony and Tom Holland. We get to see more of that. It's hinted at that, Tony had a little bit more feeling towards Tom Holland's Peter Parker than we were maybe led to believe in Endgame, because he looks at the picture of them and he's like, "Oh man, I really wish I could have saved the kid," blah blah. Which honestly, looking back, in my opinion, was a little forced, because he kind of takes a mentor stance, but not like. He definitely looks back at it with rose-tinted glasses in those movies, which I guess is fine. Because most people do. You look back on something and you think more of it than what it really was. Sure. So, now that he's lost Peter Parker, he realizes how much Peter Parker actually meant to him. So, But Robert Downey Jr. really did, Tony Stark really did mean a lot to Peter Parker. Somebody who needs and wanted a father figure. And we see that in Far From Home. He's desperate for that. That's why he falls for Mysterio's stuff. I just think that's Far From Home is a fantastic movie. It took everything that made Homecoming good and made it better. For me, Far From Home is the easy winner They're both great movies, but Spider-Man's my boy, and Civil War is an Avengers movie. Let's hear from Tim because I know where Corbin's going, so maybe we should hear from Tim first.
Okay. First off, you are 100% correct. It is not a Captain America movie. It is an Avengers movie. It is the best Avengers movie up to that point. It is better than the other two that were branded as Avengers movie. It's better than Age of Ultron, and it's definitely better than Avengers. I will say that, first off, I want to hear Corbin's part here too, but I'm just going to jump to it. Far From Home, I'm shocked you picked Far From Home because the reason you hate Iron Man 3 is the reason that I have issues with Far From Home, and it's that there's a villain who is partially a fraud.
That's Mysterio, though.
Yeah, but that is Mysterio. Mysterio is
he has no mystical
all
power.
illusion.
They downgraded Mysterio in a big way, in my opinion.
I don't think so.
I think they totally did.
They're true to the character.
Totally did.
The comics.
Yeah, they're true to the character.
I don't remember the manipulation like this. I remember Mysterio kicking like legit ass, and in the movies, he doesn't kick anybody's ass at all. Nobody's. Okay, so Captain America Civil War, I will say it's a good movie. I will say that I went and saw that by myself. I remember calling my wife after seeing it, and I said, yeah, it's a good movie, but you don't have to feel obligated to go see it. I remember being let down when I walked out of the theaters because there was so much hype for it. I mean, you have all the superheroes coming in an epic battle, and it's great. It's a great movie. It's a great scene, but there's something missing in that movie for me to say it should move on. I would say that Far From Home is my pick. I think the effects are next level. What they did with some of Mysterio's games, really, really good stuff. Plus, it was the movie that got us past Endgame, which was incredibly important. The movie that followed Endgame had to be really good for the next phase to be positioned well. And Far From Home is a really, really good movie. This is a really close matchup. This is probably the hardest one that I have to pick all day. I think I go Far From Home. I'm going Far From Home.
What do you got, Corbin? Give us your thoughts before we kill Civil War here.
My thoughts are this. One, Civil War is not an Avengers movie. It is a Captain America movie, and this is why. Yes, is Civil War the Russo brothers' application for the job of a future Avengers director? Yes. Is this movie, most importantly, told from the lens and perspective of the ongoing story of Bucky and Cap? Yes. Just because there are supporting characters that have true and defined story arcs does not mean that they are jointly the main characters. It is a sign of a well-paced, well-written, and well-directed film, which is why they were the best choice for an Avengers movie in the future, because every character in Civil War felt like they had a story to be told, but the main story going on was Cap and Bucky. My also counter argument to that is Cap doesn't have the same focal point in either Avengers movie, because in either Avengers movie preceding that, which is Infinity War and Endgame, everyone has an equal footing. This movie is primarily about Bucky and Cap, but how their influences in the universe affect the other main person in the universe, which is Tony. My biggest drawback with the movie is Civil War is my absolutely favorite story arc in all of Marvel Comics. It's one that I read the most. And I think that one of the biggest drawbacks of the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Civil War is that Tony does not reach the levels of depravity that he did in the comics. Tony does such questionable things that in the beginning, when you choose Team Tony versus Team Cap, you reach a point where if you're Team Tony in the comic world,
you were fucked up if you were Team Tony towards the end.
he starts doing some really shady shit. And if you really ride that horse home all the way to those last 3 issues, you're kind of crazy. You know, he not only starts obviously imprisoning other Marvel heroes in the negative zone, but he also creates a essentially like Thor android that he rushed into production, misled Hank Pym and Reed Richards as to why they're making this synthetic version of Thor. And this Thor goes haywire and murders Marvel heroes. And that's like one of the first moments where you're reading it on screen and Goliath falls dead, where you're like, dude, for anyone who did not realize the line that Tony can cross, this is the pure example of that. Now, I wish we had seen it in the movies, but we didn't get that. But I still wholeheartedly believe that Civil War, just because it had the Avengers as a supporting cast, it is not an Avengers movie. It is 100% told through Cap, Falcon, and Bucky's perspectives. And Tony's life is just a direct byproduct of that story unfolding, that Bucky and Cap happen to exist. In the same vein that Howard Stark is directly tethered to Cap and his lineage. So is Tony and the legacy that Cap brings him, which is the destruction of Tony's personal life. But it is not an Avengers movie because the Avengers wholeheartedly don't actually have an outcome in what the overall story of that movie is, which is Cap and Tony battling it out for idealism and walking away from each other and everyone having to choose a side.
Doesn't that make it an Avengers movie though? Because
Cap
and Iron Man, they are the Avengers.
Collateral damage. It's an Avengers collateral damage.
I can't get behind it. Can't get behind that.
I mean, it's something you and I have talked so we're blue in the face, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to get behind it. But I think that my argument, the proof in my pudding, is that you watched Endgame and Infinity War after Civil War, and you truly see what a Russo Brothers Avengers movie is. And it's totally different than Civil War. Because it's an equal
well, none of this is even relevant because Civil War loses.
But in totality, I would have chosen Far From Home because for me, it's one of the perfect MCU movies.
After all that, he still picks the same.
He still waffles.
Jeez Louise.
Okay, moving on to the marquee matchup over here in this bracket.
Yep.
We've got Avengers Endgame facing up against Thor Ragnarok. Clayton, why don't you kick it off for this one?
Okay. Man, this was kind of hard for me, to be honest. Maybe it's not. I'm going to take a hot take, maybe, and say that Thor Ragnarok should go on. I think that Taika Waititi saved Thor. We're going to get more Thor movies because of this movie. Thor is a character in Endgame and Infinity War, right? Is the way he is because of this revamp. Thor works better on screen because of the revamp that Taika Waititi brought. Endgame is a fantastic movie, but we'll get into it. Infinity War is the better of the two. Infinity War is a better film. It just is. Endgame was the culmination of years of movies. It was a cinematic marvel. It represents everything we love in the MCU, but Infinity War is just a better movie. And so based on that, based on what Thor Ragnarok means for Thor and therefore meant for the greater MCU, I have to pick Thor Ragnarok. Corbin, why don't you?
Jones.
Yeah, why don't you go?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it can't be stated that Endgame is the perfect ending to that era of the MCU. All the phases culminated, 10 plus years, 20 plus films leading to that moment. You cannot have a better bookend than Endgame. But Thor Ragnarok for me is a better movie. I watch it more. I can't understate enough the emotional toll it is to watch Endgame. Nothing in cinematic history will ever compare to Cap picking up Mjolnir. Nothing will ever compare to the funeral scene of Iron Man. And nothing will ever compare to the end credits of Endgame, where you see every actor play on screen, and it's like Paul Rudd is Ant-Man, Michael Douglas. You get to see every actor displayed, almost like it's the Silver Age of Hollywood, you know?
Yeah.
And then at the very end, it switches from the iconic film score of Alan Silvestri had to Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme. And you see the core Avengers as they play out, and it has each actor signing their name for their character, realizing this is the last time we will see all these actors on screen together. And it truly is an end. And I cry anytime that I watch it. So I can't understand enough the emotional toll this movie is, and that is an absolute win for it.
Yep.
But, and maybe that's part of the reason why I can't watch that many times. But as a standalone movie, Thor Ragnarok wins, because Avengers Endgame only works as the bookend. It only works as a triumph in cinema of 20 plus films of intertwining stories being built to this moment. But Thor Ragnarok on its own is a phenomenal movie from start to finish. And you don't have to watch anything before or after to truly enjoy it. And that's why I would choose Thor Ragnarok to win this.
So I have the hot take. I think Avengers Endgame, after the initial viewing, is almost unwatchable at times. It's too long. It's too much of a revisit of stuff that's already happened. There is that iconic scene where he gets to pick up the hammer. I mean, that's as good as it gets. Endgame was a good movie. It's the perfect love letter to fans. It's the perfect love letter to the MCU. It's incredible. All that being said, I've tried to rewatch it twice now, and I get an hour and a half in, and I realize I still got like an hour and 45 minutes left or something crazy, and I lose interest. It's a good movie. It's not one that I feel obligated or an urge to rewatch when I'm going through the MCU a second or third or fourth time. Ragnarok is always on my list, and it's always one of the first ones that I look forward to rewatching. It gets better every single time I watch it. So to me, this is lopsided, and it shouldn't be lopsided given that Endgame is the number one overall seed in the entire bracket. But this isn't even that close to me.
And the biggest movie in history.
Yeah, but it's not even a debate in my mind. It's a instantaneous Ragnarok.
But like I said, it's all of those things because of the context of the situation, right? Like its identity is ingrained in the fact that it's a culmination of so much history. But on its own, it doesn't work as well.
Yep.
All right.
Agreed.
So that means, folks, another upset. People are probably going to be upset. Thor Ragnarok moves on. We'll be facing Spider-Man Far From Home later on in the brackets. Let's move on.
That'll probably be an hour number 5 at this pace.
Yeah. We are taking a while.
All right. So I'm moving on to the next bracket.
Yep,
We've got the number 2 overall seed, which Clayton just said was the superior of the two. Avengers Infinity War is going to be facing off against Doctor Strange, the 10 seed. And then we're going to have the 3 seed, Black Panther, facing off against Ant-Man and Wasp, the 11 seed. Let's start with that one. I think that's an interesting matchup. Corbin, why don't you take this one to start?
This is Infinity War versus Doctor Strange?
No, we're going to do Black Panther and Ant-Man Wasp.
Yep.
This is an unfortunate set of circumstances in that I've already expressed my disdain, if you will, for lack of character in Ant-Man and the Wasp. But equally so, for me, that is found in Black Panther, in that I think it's the most overhyped film in all of the MCU. With
you think Marvel, Black Panther is?
I do. Black Panther certainly is a win for the franchise, not only for representation, but even before Marvel Studios, it was like the #1 movie that Stan Lee wanted to have made into a film while he was alive. I'm happy he got to see it. But when you really rewatch this movie, it's one of the most least watchable movies in the entire saga of the MCU. It has some of the worst VFX of the entire MCU, and it's on the latter half. There's no excuse for lazy VFX that's in this. And you can watch endless YouTube videos, if you don't believe me, on VFX artists ripping this movie apart for the sheer laziness that took place in this film. I do think that Killmonger is a cool villain. I do like the parable it has on racial diversity, and I think that it certainly is a palpable topic, especially now. But I just think that overall, it's just a little bit average, and it gets a little bit overhyped for the identity of what it is. And I think if you were to take away the fact that it is such a monumental achievement for representation, the movie on its own is a little average. I know that it won an Oscar for Best Original Score, taking away the soundtrack, because I know Kendrick Lamar worked really hard on the soundtrack. They take the score itself, and the score, when you listen to it, is quite mundane when you compare it to other Marvel feats like Thor, Doctor Strange, Far From Home, Homecoming, or any of the Avenger movies that Alan Silvestri, which is a composer legend in Hollywood, scored. It's just very lame. And, you know, it shouldn't be a knock against it, but it's also just a little bit like The Lion King in the sense that it's just kind of like a Hamlet reskin in a sense. But it has to win against Ant-Man and the Wasp because that movie is particularly lame compared. But it's for me.
Killmonger is, if I were to sit down, I have to sit down and actually make a list, but I would guess Killmonger's in my top 5 for villains in the MCU. He has the most tragic arc. The ending of Black Panther still hits me right in the feels, where Black Panther offers a redemption arc for Killmonger, and Killmonger says no, that he's not willing to be a slave.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking to see that storyline. Michael B. Jordan is one of my favorite actors today, so I'm biased towards his role in Killmonger. The music is A+. I know the scores may be simplistic, but I'm not going to knock it that it won an award for a score that's not better than other Avengers movies, because that's outside of its control. I will say that Black Panther was not overhyped. There are moments where the effects are a little cringeworthy, but overall, it's a fun movie. There's great action in the movie, and it was important to the universe. So for me, this is an easy one. It's Black Panther. I don't think it was overhyped, though. I think if you were to put Black Panther in other regions, we would have very, very interesting matchups against Black Panther. That would be hard to debate.
I had issues with Black Panther, but it's definitely way better than Ant-Man and the Wasp. For those listening, I guess we had a connection issue, so there might be a little bit of a confusion in the transition there. But the VFX in Black Panther, man, they leave a little bit to be desired. But the story overall, I really enjoyed.
And any plot point that needed explanation was #Vibranium. It was like a cheap, for me, it's like a cheap Bond film. And that Shuri was like Q. And it was like, I have all these fantastical gadgets and I don't need to explain it because vibranium.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's just a little bit too much.
Convenient. It's too convenient sometimes. And I'll be honest, I hate how they upgraded his suit to take kinetic energy with that purple wave and stuff. I hate that. The plain version of his suit in Civil War is way better. And
you can see how the suit wrinkles on his neck and stuff. You can see the fake suit.
Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with the VFX. The suit itself is better in Civil War, but I hate that can build up kinetic energy and then blast it out. Like, that's just silly to me. I don't like that. But it's a way better movie than Ant-Man and the Wasp. I really like Black Panther, so yeah, it's easy for me, Black Panther. So, flipping it over, we're gonna Ant-Man and Wasp has been defeated, and Black Panther is moving up. Now we're gonna be jumping into Avengers: Infinity War versus Doctor Strange. Who started us off last time? Corbin?
It was me.
That was you.
No, it was Corbin. It was Corbin.
Yeah, so why don't you start us off? It's been a minute since you started us off.
Yep. This is another easy one for me. Avengers: Infinity War is an incredible movie. From start to finish, I'm glued to the edge of the seat. I've watched that movie probably more than any other Marvel movie. I've watched it more than maybe all of Phase 1 and 2 combined multiple times. I've watched Infinity War a lot. It's an incredible movie. I think it's maybe the best Marvel movie there is. So to me, this is a no-brainer. It destroys Doctor Strange. It is must-see television every time it's on.
I completely agree. I don't think that this really even constitutes much of a discussion. We went into super detail about Doctor Strange in the first round. Doctor Strange is awesome. Benedict Cumberbatch is amazing. We'll look for him to be a centerpiece of the MCU going forward. But Infinity War is just a fantastic movie. I still stand by me saying multiple times in this podcast that Winter Soldier is my favorite, but man, Infinity War is probably objectively the best movie in the MCU. And when they first released it, or were, leading up to the release, and they said, this is a Thanos movie, we kind of said,
we scoffed.
Yeah, we scoffed. People say that all the time. It's actually a movie about the villain. It's but this really is. It really is a Thanos movie. So much so that when Endgame came out, one of my criticisms of Endgame was we didn't get enough Thanos. Like, there's no. Yep. This isn't a Thanos movie.
Reduced to an average villain.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I'll destroy the universe then. How about that?
Yeah. So Infinity War, easy. Infinity War is not only objectively, in my opinion, the best MCU movie. It's one of the best movies around.
Ever.
It's very, very good.
It's a movie that when I watch it, no matter how many times I've seen it, I still feel suspense as he collects more of the stones. And it was also a movie that the marketing team, props to them, showed scenes later in the movie and only showed 2 stones in his gauntlet when he actually had like 3 or 4 in those scenes.
The marketing team did a very good job because they changed so scenes where it was Bruce Banner in the Hulkbuster armor, it was the Hulk in the promotional material. They showed only the 2 stones that we knew for sure Thanos had, even though at that point in the movie he had all but one.
We thought that the 2 movies were going to culminate in the second Avengers movie be him getting the stones.
Right.
So after he got the 3rd stone, you and I looked at each other and we were like,
he's getting all the stones.
We are in for a different ride than we thought we were in for. We did not think the snap was going to happen in that movie. That movie is a triumph because it takes Thanos, who is a character that was teased for 20 films, but wasn't really in the forefront, and immediately puts him in an iconic status of Darth Vader, in that he will live in cinema history, whether you like Marvel Studios or not. Scorsese, it's an absolute win in that his motives are 100% empathetic, and you walk out of that movie going, does he have a point?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
He's not some like maniacal character who wants to rule the galaxy or whatever. It's truly out of a place of wanting to prosper. And when you see the sheer torment that he had when he had to sacrifice Gamora, you understood where his stakes were in his goal. He wasn't some heartless dictator. He loved in his own way, and he had to sacrifice that love to get what he believed was the greater good.
Yeah.
Infinity War all the way, and it's a triumph for how to write a villain.
Yeah, the MCU's got a high bar to follow up on. Whoever they choose, whatever they choose, whether it's Galactus, whatever, in the next series of phases.
It's tough.
Boom. Doctor Strange is defeated.
I will say one more thing. I always like to think about the emotional experience I have in a movie, and I cannot think of a movie that I've been to where when it was over, not only me, but the entire theater is just sitting there in silence because there's no post clip on it, right? There was no post credit on that movie, if I'm right? It's just
correct.
It's just silence when it's over.
It just said Thanos will return.
Yep. And it's silence. There's no music either, I don't think. I think it's just silence. And then you have end scenes. And there was nobody, and we all knew there's not going to be an end credit. Nobody got up. We just sat there in utter silence, shook into the core at what we just seen. And that's a triumph. It's hard to get a group of people to get so emotionally invested and have them utterly shocked at the end of a movie. And with a cliffhanger of that, you always get a group of people that are just pissed. They're like, oh man, a cliffhanger, seriously? That was not the case. Everybody was like, holy cow, I can't wait to go see Endgame. Give it to me right now. So that in and of itself is telling. When you can have a group of 300 people sitting there in silence for 4 minutes after a movie, you've done something right.
All right, before we get into finals of each bracket, I need to use the restroom, so if you guys are cool with it, let's take a quick break. We'll get into the finals. We are in the home stretch here, folks, so if you're still with us, bear with us.
We're in the end game.
We're in the end game now. We'll be back in just a minute. And we are back. For those who are just tuning in, this is the Nerdosphere, where a podcast that discusses anything you can nerd out about, from the big screen to the small screen and anything in between. If it's a book, music, TV, show, video game, if you can nerd out about it, most likely we're going to talk about it. And tonight we are talking about what is the best MCU movie. We're doing it tournament style. Seeds have been determined by box office numbers. Each region of the bracket has been split up using the phase, and then phase 3 has been split up into 2 sections. So we are into the final stretch. We're into the finals, quarterfinals, I guess is what it would be called. Finals of each section, each region, and then we'll be going into the big boys here in a minute. So going into quadrant 1, Tim, are we still good?
We are still good. We are in phase 1. We've got an upset facing off against a favorite. Okay, so the 4 seed Thor has beaten the first Captain America movie. It upset Avengers, which is one of the most successful Marvel movies ever made, and it will square off against the pillar, the first MCU movie, Iron Man. Corbin, why don't you kick us off on your take on the matchup?
This is Thor 1 versus Iron Man 1?
Correct.
So we've already talked about the history of each movie.
Sure have.
What each movie had to overcome when it came out.
Sure did.
So it boils down to, what movie do I watch the most?
It does.
And this movie that I watch the most is 110% Thor. You cannot deny the score, the unique tone and atmosphere of the film, and the on-screen chemistry between Thor and Loki driving the ship. And while I love Iron Man, I don't love watching it all that much. It is impactful, it's historical, but for me, Thor is all around a better movie for my personal taste.
Do you care if I go next, Tim?
Go for it.
The reason I'm going next is because I know for a fact my opinion is different, so I want to create a little bit of suspense. I'm going to go with Iron Man, and the sole reason I'm going with Iron Man is because Thor's hair in Thor 1 looks too fake. Therefore,
the only thing
Iron
fake
Man
is that they bleached his eyebrows. Which Kevin
they
Feige
bleached his
has
eyebrows.
been on record
His hair
saying
looks
it's his
fake.
biggest regret.
Iron Man wins. Tim, you're the tiebreaker. Let's hear what you gotta say.
That's a stupid reason. It's Loki, bro. It's Loki.
This is a really tough one for me. It's really tough because I love both movies.
It's Loki.
There's a wild card we haven't talked about. It's one of my favorite actors.
Oh,
it's Tom Hiddleston.
It's Idris Elba.
Idris Elba.
Idris Elba is also like Hugo Weaving, where he had to stick up his butt and thought he was too good for the MCU. And then after Taika Waititi came in and realized also that his career wasn't going anywhere because the Dark Towers failed colossally, he was like, I want to be in more Thor films. And the Russo brothers were like, sorry, you have to die in this movie.
You hate him, maybe. I love Idris Elba.
Dude, Luther is the shit.
He got a big
Luther's
head
great.
on his shoulders later.
He's got a big
career.
head. That's fine. It pushes it over the top for me. Loki is a better villain. Idris Elba's great. Thor's my favorite superhero. So Thor beats Iron Man for me.
Okay. Flipping it over to the bracket so the folks can see.
I'm surprised about that one. So I thought I was going to be the minority. I thought going into that, I would be the odd man out. So that's kind of cool.
Iron Man has been defeated. Finally. Thor, the biggest upset of the night, going into the semifinals.
Crazy.
All right.
Sometimes it's just how the brackets work, though, right?
Yep, it is. All right, let's go into phase 2 region.
Okay. Phase 2, go ahead. We have the 5 seed making it to the finals. So this is a bigger upset than Thor when you look at the numbers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, it's the 4 seed. It's Captain America, Winter Soldier. It's going to be facing off against the 3 seed, which is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, okay, yeah. So Thor is still the biggest upset so far.
Thor is
Yeah.
still a bigger upset, yes. But Winter Soldier versus Guardians of the Galaxy. This bracket was not chalk. 1 and 2 have both been defeated. Clayton.
This is easy for me. We've talked a lot about both of these movies. Winter Soldier, as I keep saying, is my favorite movie in the MCU. It's got my vote. James Gunn did an amazing job with the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a great movie, but there's no way I could pick it over Winter Soldier. You kidding me? You kidding me? Winter Soldier all the way.
In the words of Thanos, I seek balance. And throughout this entire bracket, you've heard us talk about this movie I can watch over and over again. And that's why it beats this movie. In other movies, we've said it's just better, so it beats this movie. This is a clear case of a better movie going up against a movie that I can watch an endless amount of times. I can watch Guardians almost on a loop, but Winter Soldier is the better movie. And the balance that I seek is Winter Soldier beats Guardians, because sometimes the better quality film cannot be denied.
Coming into
You
this,
had me questioning there for a second. I was like, what's happening here?
Oh man! So coming into this, I had my bracket chalked down after I created the first one, and I said, "How do I create a little bit of conflict and defend Guardians over Winter Soldier?"
But can you?
And the answer to that is I can't. I can't hold my head up high and defend Guardians over Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
So Winter Soldier wins for me.
Easy bracket, folks. Let's flip it over to the bracket so we can see it. We are defeating Guardians of the Galaxy. Captain America, Winter Soldier is headed to the semifinals. Now, let's flip it over to Phase 3, Quadrant 3.
Lots of threes. Okay. I want to make sure I've got it right here too. This matchup is going to be the 5th seed, Spider-Man Far From Home, facing off against the 9th seed. All upsets on this side of the bracket so far.
Yeah.
Thor Ragnarok. Corbin, you kick this one off.
This is a tough one, man. Not only
this is hard.
Before you start, not only are these two huge upsets, but them going up against each other is pretty difficult.
This is literally,
they're great movies.
This is exactly like on our Nickelodeon bracket when we had Drake and Josh going up against Keenan and Kel.
This is exactly like that.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah, you're right. Because to me, there's one that's clearly a winner.
Yeah.
It's not even debated.
I don't remember having a problem picking between. Well, no, I guess
there was.
We would. I guess we would have a problem.
You wanted to do Drake and Josh, but after I explained like the comedic influence of Keenan and Kel and how they set up the episodes and stuff,
I wanted Drake and Josh.
Drake and Josh
over
is
Keenan
what you
and
wanted. Kel? I convinced you for Keenan and Kel. I just watched the episode like the other day. It was a good episode.
It's a shame we didn't finish that.
All right, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go now. You guys can finish without me, so I'll just leave. So this is obviously hard. I believe that Far From Home is one of the perfect MCU films. It's perfect Spider-Man. It gave me Mysterio in a way that I needed. It dealt with the legacy of Tony Stark, which I think is, for me personally, one of the next phases I want to see of the MCU is how the iconic Avengers and their legacy on their world impact and have a ripple effect. And that's the first taste I got of that. But Ragnarok, man, is just, it's Taika Waititi's love letter to the MCU. Like you said, it's the reason why we're getting more Thor. It's why Chris Hemsworth wants more Thor. It's also why we're getting Taika Waititi in Star Wars, and he's doing a Star Wars movie. So Thor Ragnarok is literally the reason why a lot of our favorite fandoms are getting his particular little bit of spice.
That's true.
And when I really look at Spider-Man, while they are triumphs because Kevin Feige is ultimately the one who made them, John Watts as a director doesn't have the same flair. And in this instance, this bracket has shown me that I lean more towards the directors who are so collaborative with Marvel that they make a movie that's truly a Marvel film, but also you can tell that they made it. John Watts' Spider-Man movies, I truly think anyone could have made those as long as Kevin Feige was on deck to do script revisions. We would have gotten a perfect Spider-Man movie. Thor Ragnarok is truly because Taika Waititi is who he is, and it's his style of humor. I gotta go with Ragnarok on this one.
Do you care if I go, Tim? Because I think this will cause a little bit of controversy. Because I don't know where you stand, and I know I stand opposite Corbin. So, I completely 100% agree with you, Corbin. Completely 100%. I can't debate any of the points you just made, but I have to go with Spider-Man Far From Home. If given the choice, this is kind of my baseline for me personally. If given the choice, which movie would I watch? This is the hypothetical never happened situation. You can only watch these two movies. Which one will you watch? I would choose Far From Home. I love Spider-Man too much. I love Tom Holland too much. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio was too awesome. We went over it just a minute ago, so I'm not going to rehash everything, but it was the perfect bookend to the bookend for the Infinity Saga. I have to go with Spider-Man. Have to. Plus, It represents just a continuation of something that we've never seen before in movies. Like this movie, it being such a success because it made over $1 billion, right? Am I wrong in that? It made over $1 billion.
Yes, it did.
Okay. It gave Tom Holland such a strong platform to say, "Hey, Bob Iger, fix the deal. I want to be Spider-Man." Like, we've been talking about behind the scenes stuff, and it's influenced some of our decisions in this bracket. I feel like we have to acknowledge that the Sony Disney partnership is something that we've never seen and probably will only ever see with Spider-Man. Spider-Man has brought together Hollywood like no other property could. And it's given someone like Tom Holland the power to call a CEO of a company and say, "I love this character. The fans love this character. Make it happen." And they made it happen. So I have to pick Spider-Man. I have to.
I love the classic Mickey Mouse meme where it's Mickey Mouse going to Sony and says, "How much for Spider-Man?" And Sony says, "Not for sale." And then it's Mickey Mouse holding two guns. "How much for the company?" Right? Because like Disney was seriously going to just buy Sony at this point and then have Spider-Man that way. It's amazing. Okay, so this one you'd mentioned the drama you guys had on Nickelodeon. This one I don't even think twice about, which is a surprise to me because I love both movies.
Okay,
but I love one of them more than pretty much every other Marvel movie there is, and it's Thor Ragnarok.
Dang,
Hela is a incredibly enticing villain. It's got better music in it. It's got more intrigue and drama, and it's got perfectly timed comedy. It's incredible. So to me, this is an easy one. Thor Ragnarok goes.
Okay. I mean, I get it. I can't say otherwise. My poor baby. Thor Ragnarok moves on to the semifinals. No Spider-Mans have made it.
It pains me too. Unfortunately, in the bracket system, someone has to win. And for me, I watched Thor over Far From Home.
Yeah. Can we just take a minute to just acknowledge Spider-Man didn't make it to the semifinals, and it is by far my favorite property. I love Spider-Man.
So I agree with you. For me, honestly, my two favorite comic book heroes of all time are debatably mirrors of themselves, in that Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel and Nightwing is my favorite DC. They have very similar traits unto themselves.
We got a really weird semi-final going on, by the way.
But I think when we really break down these movies and you have to compare them, I guess there's just a lot more that goes into it than just who's your favorite character. Because I prefer Taika's tone over John Watts.
That's true. And I think, not to toot our own horn, but the point I was getting at is I think that kind of proves that we're willing to admit that movies are made with more than just like our favorite characters. So I'm not voting for Spider-Man just because. Like, I didn't vote for Homecoming, for example. So we've really done well in these brackets, and it's really challenged us to really look at what makes a movie better than another. So I'm proud of what we've done here tonight, boys.
I agree.
I feel good about all the picks so far.
As a comic book fan, I would never say that Thor was a favorite of mine. In fact, the only time I ever bought Thor comics was to fill in gaps. Like after Avengers Disassembled, between that and Civil War, we never knew where Thor was. So I specifically had to buy Thor Disassembled to see where was he.
Yeah, exactly. Thor comics, not a fan. Thor as a character, huge fan. I love Thor in things. I don't necessarily love Thor's things.
Right.
Makes sense?
I love Thor's thing.
All right, so last bracket, pulling it up just for a refresher. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, this bracket, let me get there too. We've got the second seed, Avengers Infinity War, facing off against the first Marvel movie to ever win an Academy Award in Black Panther. We already know that Corbin thinks that Black Panther is one of the more overrated movies. So, Clayton, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I do really like Black Panther. I like what it represents. I almost wish that Black Panther had come out sooner. When it came out, it seemed like there was a little bit of too much chatter, even if it wasn't that much, that Marvel was putting it out just to add diversity. I think that Black Panther is a good enough character that they should have and could have probably introduced him sooner. But it is what it is. The MCU shook out the way it was, and I think it's fine. All that being said, there's no way it even compares to Infinity War. I've said it just a few minutes ago. It's objectively, in my opinion, just the best movie. Winter Soldier is my favorite movie. I think Infinity War is the best movie. Not only out of the MCU, but it's one of the best movies ever. If we made a list of just really great movies, this would be on there.
There's not a single cringe moment in Infinity War.
Right, yeah.
There are cringe moments in Black Panther.
There's no moment in Infinity War where you are taken out of the movie. And that's a great accomplishment. Very few movies do you go through 100% of the... And Infinity War's 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
You go through the whole time and nothing is even slightly cringy. You're never pulled out and thought, that's not going to happen.
And you have aliens, you have wizards, you have a Hulk, you have superhumans like Spider-Man, you have things like Iron Man, and they all mesh perfectly. But then for me in Black Panther, you have elements like their technology doesn't seem to follow all the rules that they set up, because they just need it as a convenient plot device.
Yeah.
So Infinity War brings so many elements together that shouldn't work, and they just mesh perfectly.
Yep. And I really do like Black Panther. I can't wait for the sequel. But there's no way it's better than Infinity War. There's no world I could choose it over Infinity War, unfortunately. So
no.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I mean, Black Panther's great. I know Corbin thinks it's overrated. I loved it. There are some cringeworthy moments. Infinity War is perfect. Black Panther is not.
I don't think
My only
it's
thing with Black
overrated.
Panther,
I really feel like it's unfortunate that it was the one to win an Academy Award first.
because it's not exceptionally better.
Right, yeah, it's not like there are other movies that are as good, or better. But
when you look at all the movies that are in Phase 3, for me, Black Panther is one that's closest to a Phase 2 Marvel movie than the Phase 3 Marvel movies, where this is the future of the MCU and where it's gonna go.
I can see
and
that.
For me, that's why I feel like it's a little bit overrated, because it's one of the later films, but tonally, it isn't as evolved as the others. And I never want to be that guy, but I sometimes when I see how hyped it is, I feel like it's because of what it is.
Right.
And that's not fair, in my opinion.
Well, and that goes along with what I was saying. It probably should have came out earlier. Even back when Phase 3 was being talked about, we wondered how Black Panther was going to fit into Phase 3, because Phase 3 was all building towards Infinity War, and Black Panther is kind of an offshoot of that. There is no besides the end credit stinger where Bucky is there. There's no it doesn't add anything to the MCU is what I'm trying to get at, and I'm having a terrible time trying to word it. It doesn't add anything to that trajectory. It doesn't push the MCU towards Infinity War.
Right.
So it should have come out earlier. If it had come out in Phase 2, we may have had a way bigger opinion of it, because I really like that movie. But you're exactly right. When you compare it to the rest of Phase 3, it's just
but it's kind of the perfect storm, because it won the awards for what it is, but it did the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite that normally happens. It's the superhero movies don't win the awards because of what they are. Right. So that's why it's so bittersweet, is that's what it took to put superhero movies over the top and finally give it the recognition that they deserved. I think Corbin has said this on Twitter, and it's like one of the most true things he said. He said, it's a crying shame that Infinity War didn't win best effects for the year. Like, you just look around and the whole movie is effects. The whole thing.
Thanos alone. You take production or like release photos and you zoom in on like 4K images of Thanos, you see pores, you see hairs, you see sporadic hairs on his knuckles that you see on your own hand. It is a monumental feat.
Graphic effects artists
and VFX.
Like, there was one dude whose job for 6 months was you work on his knuckle. Like, the detail in Infinity War, like, that's,
for me, it shows how tone deaf the Academy is, and only bolsters. I know that it's a controversial hot take, but why Black Panther won awards? For me, it's pandering. For me, it's a movie that was made, in Clayton's credit, it should have come out sooner, but it didn't. And because it came out for the sake of adding diversity, it was awarded for having diversity, when in actuality, it should have come out beforehand. It shouldn't have gotten a pat on the back for coming out when it did, because they didn't have the courage to release it when they should have.
Yeah.
And because of that, we have other movies that should have won awards that didn't.
We should have seen Black Panther come out earlier. We should have seen, we don't know what Black Widow is going to entail, but we probably should have seen a Black Widow movie sooner. Shang-Chi should have come out before now. The MCU should have been diversified long ago.
Yeah.
Preach.
So we're in agreement after going off on that tangent.
I think it's a good tangent, because I think it's one that people shy away from. And we're coming from a perspective of loving the characters and realizing it should have come out beforehand. But the reaction and attention it's gotten afterwards has taken away from legitimate attention that other films should have had.
Yeah.
Like how on earth does Black Panther be even nominated for VFX? And like Infinity War is just sitting there like,
seriously?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll be honest, Black Panther's suit in that movie does not look good most of the time, and I've been so against the direction that the MCU has taken with everybody's mask being made of nanomachines and just coming off. I hate that. Just wear the fucking mask. Just wear it.
Agreed.
I'm so tired of it. We don't need to see. And then there's parts in Black Panther where you just see his eyes, where you just see Chadwick Boseman's eyes through the mask because the eye slits have like come back on his mask. Get out of here with that shit. Stop it. It looks dumb. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. Stop it. If you wanted to take his mask off, have him take his fucking mask off. Okay? That's all it is.
It's like bat nipples.
It's exactly like bat nipples.
It's exactly like bat nipples.
It's the same level of disrespect. You right.
All right, take us to the next one.
Okay. Clayton, you ready?
All right. Give me 1 second here. I'm adding Infinity War to our finals bracket. All right, I am pulling it up, and I am ready. We've got our semifinals.
We got semis for phase 1 and phase 2, and we have an upset in the finals. We have the 4 seed Thor facing off against another upset, another 4 seed facing up against Winter Soldier. So Thor versus Winter Soldier. We already know where Clayton's head's at. Corbin's head, I'm not so sure. So Corbin, you take us off here.
No way. Stop it.
I'm not overamplifying anything. Okay. For me, I would rather watch, given the option, I watch Thor. Truthfully. If I have free time and I have,
if somebody sat you down and said, listen,
stop,
you can watch.
Stop. Okay? You've been preaching to the choir all night. Give me a second in these 3 hours.
Wait a second. You're telling me
to say what I want to say.
You're telling me I have to give you a minute to say what you want to say.
Given the option of the two, Thor is what I get the most enjoyment out of like a leisurely night of wanting to watch a movie. Having said that, again, being a comic book fan, not to sound pretentious, but one of my favorite runs of any comic that's in the 7 boxes I have in my closet is Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America. And the Winter Soldier film is 100% an adaptation of that run of Captain America. I don't like a lot of Captain America comics, but that run of Captain America where he's Cap, he's chasing down the Winter Soldier, he finds Bucky, and then Cap eventually dies and Bucky has to take the shield reluctantly, knowing that he's not worthy of the shield. The shield represents something and it needs to be a mantle that's taken up, and he takes it on with a heavy burden. That is like one of the coolest comic book stories to read, and I encourage anyone to read it. And for me, that film, The Winter Soldier, is a perfect tonal adaptation of those comics, and it beats Thor, hands down.
Okay, Clayton?
Yeah, Captain America, Winter Soldier is my favorite movie of the MCU.
Yeah,
Thor's hair looks terrible.
I'm trying to.
It's also the only one that we get to see his helmet, so you're not giving that credit.
Put the helmet on. His hair looks terrible.
I really want to interject drama.
He didn't have
right
the nanotechnology to put it on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If only Black Panther had come out. I want to make this enticing, but I cannot hold my head up high and say that it's not Winter Soldier. It's too good. It's too good of a movie not to just blow past Thor. Thor's good. I think in the bracket, I'm a little surprised you guys agreed with me that Thor made it all the way. So I'm pleased there. Winter Soldier is a landslide.
I didn't want Thor to make it this far.
Yeah, Corbin and I, though, we're like.
If anything, I am rather shook at how much Tim and I have agreed so far. Because based on our texting conversations,
we usually don't.
I really thought Tim was going to be the odd man out and Clayton and I were going to rule the nest. But Yeah, there's no way that Winter Soldier can't win this. It's Winter
all of
Soldier. Remember when the trailer came out and we saw him chasing after Bucky, and it's the scene where the camera is going alongside the building and you see Cap running through each office door and just pounding through. I just remember being mouth agape. I was like, this is Captain America, finally.
And that's what it is. They understand Captain America. It's a shame that Civil War was a Avengers movie.
Moving on.
All right, real quick before we move on to the last thing, I'm just updating our bracket here. Boom.
Corbin, the reason we're getting along so well tonight is all the time we've snuggled over the past couple months. It's made a huge difference, for sure.
Captain America is moving on to the finals. Thor has been defeated.
So in the finals right now, you guys know which is won. Okay. Winter Soldier is going up against Infinity War. This is going to be a tough pick, especially for Clayton, because he has all night said
we haven't even talked about. So you're just assuming that Thor Ragnarok is going to defeat Infinity War?
Oh, we thought we already did that one.
No.
Screw it. Rewind it.
And I guess we know where your vote's at.
I am assuming that. Okay. Well, I'll kick it off. I thought we already did this. Thor Ragnarok. We could have had Thor versus Thor in the finals.
Could have.
That would have been sexy. Okay, Thor.
Probably in the ultimate, maybe in the Ultimate Universe that would have happened, but not in 616.
So Thor Ragnarok versus Infinity War. You guys already know where my head's at. Infinity War, I think, is one of the best movies ever made. I love Thor Ragnarok. It's super entertaining. It's a fun ride. It doesn't leave you emotionally drained the same way that Infinity War does. But Infinity War is a work of art. And as I've said before, it's perfection. So Infinity War is an easy pick on my side.
Corbin, where's your head at? Because I know where mine's at, and it won't create controversy. So
Infinity War, hands down. As much as I love
Infinity War.
Ragnarok,
okay, that's good because I've already screwed up that whole segment. So let's just get to it.
Let's just go. I won't even pull up the bracket. Actually, I will pull up the bracket just to show the finals. All right, so finals. Go, Tim. Go.
Infinity War versus Winter Soldier. Clayton has a really tough pick. We all have a really tough pick because these are the two best movies in the universe. They are. It's not even close in my mind. There's really not much of a debate. Clayton, you look like you have some talking points here. So why don't you kick us off?
So I just want to take a minute and say,
Russo,
how proud I am that my favorite movie in the MCU and the objectively best, in my opinion, MCU movie have made it to the finals. So even in this bracket form, the two best movies, I don't know that there's much of an argument here for these two. So we're talking about these two still, not versus them. Compared to the other movies that we've gone through so far, I don't know that there's much of an argument that could have been made to keep these two from the finals. And I'm pretty proud and happy that they made it here. Now,
could you imagine how tragic it would have been if if we would have not done the seeding by phase and you had Winter Soldier going up against Infinity War in like round 2?
Yeah.
I mean, just tragic.
Yeah, I wonder how. Did you do the seeding at all just by box office and not broke it up into phase?
Well, I mean, the quadrants are by phase. Quadrants are by phase. So
well, yeah, but I wonder if you had done all quadrants, kind of how you did phase 3,
just all
and
by box
like
office.
seeded them all, and then done just a massive. I wonder how that would have changed anything, or if it would have.
I mean, Winter Soldier would have gone up against tough guys right at the gate because it only made $700 million. In the grand scheme of things, that's bottom 10 in the MCU.
Yeah. But I strike that up as it was early phase 2 and first Avenger didn't do very well.
Because it's the worst one.
Yeah. So all that aside, this is an extremely tough matchup. You all know how I feel about both these movies. Winter Soldier is my favorite movie. I would watch it any day of the week.
The question is, what hill are you going to die
What hill can I die on? What hill can my honor survive?
That moving forward,
I will
anyone who
stand on a
watches our
hill and
podcast
die,
will
but
trust
my
your
honor must survive. So which hill will my honor live on?
Some real Viking shit right there.
Spoiler alert, I do know that The Hill You Die On has the Russo brothers as the director.
Wow. Insightful. You're right. So, while Winter Soldier is my personal favorite movie, I have made it very vocal that Infinity War is the best movie in the MCU. Not only in the MCU, but could be made to argue that it's one of the best movies, could be on a list of best movies of all time. So I don't think that I could live with myself and say Winter Soldier wins, however much I would like it. In this case, I would have to go against my instinct, which is which movie would I watch more? And that would be Winter Soldier. But Infinity War is the better movie. So I vote that Infinity War is the overall best movie in the MCU.
Corbin?
For me, it is not quite the quandary it is for Clayton. I do not have as many qualms that he has, nor do I have many queries onto the topic. Well, I respect.
Got any other keywords to throw in there real quick? I'm joking.
Queef. Sorry.
Anyway, while I respect Winter Soldier for what it is, Winter Soldier was the launching pad to get the Russo brothers to tell the story they were destined to tell. And that was Infinity War. Infinity War, from start to finish, is a triumph on so many things that if I were to say, it's just a reiteration of what we've said to this point. We don't need to defend why this movie should win. If you've been listening to this episode at all, it is quite clear why it should win. Infinity War, 100%.
I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to do this. That's the winner.
Should have gone for the head, boy.
It's not close for me. I mean, I would put Winter Soldier as the. Now, you know what is an interesting one for me? I would have picked Ragnarok over Winter Soldier. I love Ragnarok that much, but outside of those two going head to head, like Infinity War is a tier of its own. It is. And I really don't even believe in that argument. We've talked about it a lot. I believe in balance. You can't have one movie in the bottom tier, regardless if it's Iron Man 3 or the first Captain America or Thor 2. I can't have one movie in its own tier. But if I had to do that, it would be very easy to say Infinity War is in its own tier. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, real quick, just to show the winner. Wow, 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 wow. Avengers Infinity War has won and has been named here by the Nerdosphere the best MCU movie thus far. We are entering new territory in the MCU, but for the Infinity Saga, 23 movies, one reigns supreme. Avengers Infinity War. So, any final thoughts before we take this massive podcast that will be split into two parts out?
Just that this episode was long, obviously longer than we had anticipated, and rightfully so. It should be split into two episodes. But I am so elated and delighted that I'm living in a time of cinema where we actually get to see these characters unfold on screen. I have always loved film growing up, but I have never nerded out about movies like the MCU. And leading up to Endgame and seeing most of the popular comic stories already adapted, there's a little bit of trepidation moving into the future of the MCU on what to expect, because we're in uncharted territory in that the stories will be more original than leaning into the source material. And I'm only confident in the future of the MCU and what we're going to get because of Kevin Feige. And I cannot sing that man's praises enough on what he's done for Marvel and Marvel Studios. And that's why the Nerdosphere, we will always immortalize the hashtag "In Feige We Trust." Because there have been numerous times leading up the past 10 years and 22 films of Marvel that we've seen a director or a casting where we think to ourselves, is that the best move? And more times than not, we're proven wrong. And it's because of Kevin. So it is only because that he is still with Marvel Studios as their head that we're moving into this new era of Marvel, post Iron Man, post Cap, post traditional Avengers, and new stories, that I still find myself super excited because of Kevin Feige.
Well said. He's become a standard, at least in our talking points. We bring him up. We need Kevin Feige, someone like Kevin Feige in Star Wars. Need someone like Kevin Feige with DC. So,
and let's not forget that he's making a Star Wars movie.
Supposedly.
I want to see that role go to DC. I really do. I feel pretty good about the hand of Star Wars right now. I don't feel good about DC at all. And it's tragic that we haven't been given the same type of universe that we've gotten from the MCU. Yeah. They've got the characters, they've got everything they need to do it. They just need the right man in the seat to bring it home. And I hope they find it. I don't like DC movies at all. And I would be the first one in line if they were to come up with that guy who could start creating consistently good content. So let's hope that happens, because there's a whole untapped world over there that they could just blow it all up and start over. And I would be on board if I knew they had the right vision.
DC arguably could be better than the MCU if it was done like the MCU. Because DC has consistently, like in other media and other mediums, been better at combining shows, combining characters. Like the cartoons of old were phenomenal. So
I think that part of the reason for DC's failure is equally why Marvel has succeeded, in that DC has had the most popular characters in their arsenal. Marvel had to scrape at the bottom of the barrel to start their cinematic universe. They had to choose B-level and C-level characters to start with. And the only way you do that is seeing like what makes these characters tick. When you have characters that are Goliaths like Superman and Batman, you get kind of like Icarus flying to the sun, where you think this is going to sell because it's the character, and you don't give it the same time of day of how do I make Thor work and make it sell.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. And I think that's why maybe, in my opinion, Shazam is the best DC movie, because Shazam's kind of that way. He isn't one of the more popular characters, and you kind of have to work harder to sell him.
Well, the problem DC has too, to go more along your point, is that they've got these popular characters that everyone knows about. So, like, aside from Spider-Man and Marvel, the most popular characters around are DC. And you get people like Zack Snyder a hold of them, and they're like, okay, how can I make this character mine? Or how can I change it to make it feel fresh? And that's not what's needed. You need to embrace the source material.
You also are stuck with the issue in that when Marvel Studios launched and chose which characters to make movies about, it was from a place of pure passion and love for the characters. And when Disney bought them, they gave them a blank checkbook. Warner Brothers has always owned the rights to DC characters, and Warner Brothers is old Hollywood with meddling thinkers and meddling producers who just can't do enough alone.
Yep, that is true.
Which I think means that we may never see DC create a rivaling cinematic universe in any capacity to anything that Marvel does, because at the end of the day, Warner Brothers, which is now AT&T, has the final say on what's being done, and they're going to try to do what they think is best instead of it being a creative team that is a passion project launching a vision.
Yeah. So, sidebar, does AT&T own HBO? Is that why there's like a sudden fusion there? Or is that just another deal that's been made?
I don't know how that shakes out.
Because I actually just signed up for the 7-day free trial for HBO Max, and they've got Cartoon Network stuff, they got Crunchyroll stuff, they've got DC stuff, like Doom Patrol is going to be on there. Not all of the stuff that's on the DC standalone streaming services on there, just Doom Patrol. But they make it apparent that, you know, there's a section that you click on DC and they show all the DC stuff, all the Cartoon Network stuff. So I was just curious if AT&T owned all that. I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't know either.
We'll have to look in that and let you all know. All right, well, with all that said and all that done, we have crowned a winner. Infinity War reigns supreme in the MCU, and no one can argue because we spent 4 hours deciding. So, that's it for this week's Nerdosphere. Remember to subscribe. We've got a newly revamped YouTube page. Be sure to keep in touch with us because YouTube's going to become a bigger part going forward. But as we said at the top of the show, we will let you know when that becomes more of a thing. Give us a follow over at Twitter at NerdosphereCast. Make sure to find us on Facebook at facebook.com/TheNerdosphere. You can also join our group on Facebook, which has become a fantastic community page full of memes and great nerdy things. Just search for The Nerdosphere in groups and select join. Be sure to go over to thenerdosphere.com to find our hub of everything that we do, and we will show you stuff. I don't know, we do stuff over there. Go check it out.
All sorts of stuff.
If you like what we do, go over to iTunes. If you listen to us on iTunes, just scroll down real quick. Give us a 5-star rating. It really does help. The iTunes algorithm relies heavily on reviews. So if you like what we do and you're listening to us on your iPhone, scroll down and give us a 5-star rating. You can fill out a review if you want. If we see one pop up, we will read it on the show, so you'll hear yourself on the show. If you really like what we do and you want to see all the stuff that we offer over on our Patreon, go over to patreon.com/thenerdosphere and you can see all the goodies. You can become a part of the show, gain access to our trivia, gain access to extra podcasts, gain access to extra content. We're going to be doing movie riffs. We've got a list of movie riffs we're going to be starting soon. Book clubs. Go over there and check it out. But until then, and until next time, we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Toodaloo, yo.